Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said Stump. You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting.
I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News, weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you, 6 o'clock, Friday the 21st of June. Today, the battle for number 10. Party leaders faced another grilling on last night's televised election programme. But who came out on top?
The hunt for Jay Slater, the missing teenager in Tenerife, has now entered its 5th day. A friend claims the Spanish police are not doing enough.
The Hollywood icon Donald Sutherland has died at the age of 88. We'll look back on his career, which spanned more than 7 decades.
Thousands of people have flocked to Stonehenge this morning to celebrate the summer solstice as the sun rises over the horizon.
Working from home, productive or a licence to be lazy? We'll debate that just after 7.
And as the sun rises over my horizon here in the sport, there's good news. England currently top Group C. The bad news is that England were really bad against Denmark yesterday, and I don't really want to talk about it anymore, but that's my job. Kylian Mbappe returns to France against the Netherlands today with a mask. And in tennis, Britain's #1 Jack Draper beat Carlos Alcaraz at Queen's, which is the first time a Brit has knocked out a top seed there for 52 years.
Good morning. It's another sunny day for many of us, but there is some rain due later. You can find out all the details with me a little later on.
Morning to you, I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Good morning to you. I am having a mild panic today.
Why are you having a mild panic?
Because when I got out of the car here in London, I realised I had left my phone.
There's nothing worse.
At home, 100 miles away.
Oh dear. So it's not like you can pop it in an Uber?
No. So I'm slightly panicking, which is ridiculous, isn't it?
No, I had a similar thing the other day. I left my phone at home, got to the station. I thought, oh, maybe I could have a phone-free day. No, I had to go back. I went back.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I had to go back.
It's just
Couldn't be without it.
It's that horrible thing. What if people are desperately trying to get hold of me?
I know.
Anyway, let's message you instead.
Exactly. So instead, I have got the communication this morning.
Yes.
And everything, because the only thing that was the issue was the app.
My blood glucose thing.
Glucose app. So I've just downloaded it on my phone. And we're going to check your levels throughout the show.
So you're checking my levels constantly?
It's quite good. I feel very responsible for you.
Do you?
Yeah.
Well, if I collapse, it's your fault.
I feel like I've got parental responsibility and power over you today, and I like it.
Oh, dear. So anyway, if you're a phone panicker, love to hear from you this morning, because I can still log into the laptop. gbnews.com/yoursay. So it'd be really good to hear from you. Or if you've got any advice on how to what would you call it? De-digitise
digital detox.
Oh, that's it.
That's what you're going through today, digital detox.
Yeah.
I think you'll quite enjoy it, you know.
Yeah.
Not that I've ever given myself the chance. Actually, once my phone got stolen and I had a week... I was actually on holiday and I then had a week without my phone.
Right.
Sat on the beach reading for a week. It was quite
nice?
Yeah, so maybe that could be you today.
Yeah. It should be easier for me because I'm not big into the social medias and stuff. I don't do it... I'm not forever looking at social media.
Oh, that's true.
I do like to slip into a YouTube hole.
You do, yes. He does a deep dive into YouTube, don't you? Often I find you after several hours.
Yes. It's quite nice.
YouTube deep dive.
Those little shorts that you get and you just flip through the constant...
it's a constant stream. It's a dangerous game.
So that's my thing.
But anyway,
right.
I'm very glad you're here.
Thank you. We better crack on, hadn't we? Because last night, the leaders of the Conservatives, Labour, Lib Dems and the SNP... but not Reform UK, which is an interesting one, were all grilled by the public in a BBC election special.
Well, the Prime Minister said he was incredibly angry to learn about Tory figures allegedly betting on the election date.
So Ed Davey was taken to task over his handling of the Post Office scandal.
And Sir Keir Starmer said Jeremy Corbyn would have made a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson.
Well, let's have a look back now at the last 24 hours in politics.
Well, like you, I was incredibly angry to learn of these allegations. It's a really serious matter. It's right that they're being investigated properly by the relevant law enforcement authorities, including, as Fiona said, a criminal investigation by the police.
Migration is at record levels at the moment under this government. They've completely lost control. We need to get that number down. We need to get it significantly down. I'm not going to put an arbitrary figure on it, because every single politician who's put a number on it has never met that number.
When Alan Bates wrote to me, I'd been in office about 2 weeks, and I wrote to him and said, no, this is a matter for the Post Office, we don't govern it, and I'm not going to meet you. He wrote back furious, he did, and then I read his letter and said, well, I better meet him. And I met him in October, as you said, Fiona, and I took all his questions and I asked them to my officials and to the Post Office. And they gave me a categorical assurance that the points that Mr Bates was making were not true.
When Labour launched their manifesto last week, there were 6 key objectives. Not one of them mentioned legal immigration. Not one of them mentioned the population explosion in this country.
Well, let's get the thoughts of Spiked Online Deputy Editor Fraser Myers. Morning to you, Fraser.
Good morning.
And what did you make of the election programme last night?
I think it's quite long, quite tedious, but some good moments there. And I think with a lot of these programmes, actually, the audience is the real winner. You know, they ask some really good questions. They put people on the spot. Keir Starmer was put on the spot as his support over Jeremy Corbyn. I mean, it's amazing that he gets asked this question all the time, but he can't provide a satisfactory answer.
No, he's had time to think about it.
He has had a lot of time to think about it. He's had a lot of practice, and he couldn't... basically, it was put to him this quote that he said that Corbyn would make a great Prime Minister. So essentially, you know, before he'd been saying, I think, fair enough, that, you know, well, I campaigned for whoever was the Labour leader. Then it was put to him, you said specifically who would be a great Prime Minister, and he really, really struggled to answer it, and eventually came up with this sort of formulation that he would have been better than Boris Johnson, which did not convince the audience at all. Sunak was put on the spot immediately about this betting scandal, which I'm sure we'll go into a bit later. Even Ed Davey was put on the spot over his role in the post office scandal, and one of the questions I liked from the audience was about his horseplay. You know, you're not taking politics seriously by doing all these pratfalls, falling into lakes, going on roller coasters, spending the day at Thorpe Park. Again, he had a bit of a lame answer. He tried to say that, well, the reason I was water paddling was to highlight the sewage scandal. And then, why were you on a roller coaster? And he said, well, because politics is a bit of a roller coaster, leading to huge groans, understandably, from the audience.
Yeah. I tell you what, I was very disappointed in. Was when you look at who was on there, the sort of three main Westminster parties, if you like, if you view it in that sense, plus the SNP. But with what is happening at the moment, surely Reform UK should have had a voice on that.
You would have thought so. You'd think that they would be responding to the polling, as you say, what is happening out there in the campaign, and especially if the leader of the SNP is there. You know, someone for whom 90% of people in the country can't even vote for. Even if you loved him, you couldn't vote for him. Not that that's likely, and it was quite telling actually. You know, most of the people asking questions were clearly English. You know, that was the majority of the audience. So yeah, I think people have been sold short a little bit there. I mean, Nigel Farage is on a Question Time special next week with Carla Denyer, the Green Party leader, but they're in a different league, quite frankly. You know, there's even the possibility, some polls putting Reform neck and neck with the Tories. I think it seems absurd that, you know, the mainstream media have not really caught up with what is going on in the campaign and the mood in the country.
Can you tell us about the latest in this betting scandal? The Eye saying this morning that it threatens to derail the Tory campaign.
Well, as if the Tory campaign were not derailed enough. I mean, we were probably wondering when the next scandal was going to hit. It's been about 2 weeks since D-Day probably put the election out of reach for Rishi Sunak. Now, we've had the arrest of Rishi Sunak's personal protection officer, 3 people closely connected to him in the Tory party, 2 of them Tory candidates, one of them the campaign director for the Conservatives. So they're under investigation.
Who's the husband of one of the candidates?
Who is the husband of one of the candidates? Yeah. So Tony Lee, the husband of Laura Saunders. The other candidate, Craig Williams, is a close aide to Rishi Sunak, and they've been essentially alleged to have been putting on bets, you know, using this kind of insider information to their advantage. This is obviously illegal under the gambling laws. You can't use private information that isn't known to the public to take advantage of bets. And it's just such an absurd and, you know, silly and lurid scandal. I mean, you're talking about Craig Williams is alleged to have put on a £100 bet. You know, we're talking such small amounts of money, but, you know, this is the last act of, the last time they get to use their influences, this is how they do it. It just feels like such a fitting epitaph to sort of a very tired and...
I mean, you couldn't in a way, you couldn't make it up. I mean, for me, I have to say, I mean, if these allegations were found to be true, it's in a way you can't always work out what individual candidates are going to do. But if someone is connected with the campaign directly, then it's that link with the PM.
Exactly, and then you can see that it's not just a lucky guess or they've, you know, people might pick up a rumour. That would be a bit less scandalous. But if they're so closely connected to the PM, you think they must have some kind of information that other people don't, that other people are not privy to. And it's interesting, you know, so many bets were placed around this time that there was a noticeable spike. So the Financial Times has looked at the fact that, you know, several £1,000s were placed on a certain day for this July election. And in fact, even, you know, this was so noticeable, one person that noticed it at the time was Morgan McSweeney, Labour's campaign director. So that gave him a little hint that the election was going to take place in July. So it's everything about this scandal, has gone wrong for them.
I was just going to say, within all of this, there's all this scrutiny, because obviously we're talking about the scandal for the Tories, we're talking about the Jeremy Corbyn issue for Keir Starmer and what have you, but there's not much criticism, if you like, of what Reform is doing. Now, is that because they're not getting the attention in the main media?
Yeah, that could be. I think,
because we've got to look at it, whether you like the plans or not, they need to be examined.
I think what, the criticism we are seeing is of various candidates who maybe haven't been vetted properly. There's another story came out about a candidate who's been making racist comments, for instance, about Diane Abbott. Recently, we had the candidate who said that we should have appeased Hitler in World War II. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing him badly, but that's that was the kind of gist of it. So there's been some of that. I mean, there's been some criticism of the manifesto, or not manifesto, we're not supposed to call it that. But,
no, the contracts
with the people.
Contract, yeah.
But you're right. I mean, they're not getting the same amount. They're not, certainly in the mainstream media, they're not getting the attention that you'd think their poll ratings would warrant. And attention isn't just positive, as you say. They need to be scrutinised as well. Every party needs that.
Yeah.
What do you think about the scrutiny on Sir Keir Starmer last night? Because I thought there were two things that were quite interesting. First is the delay to BAT on private schools till 2025. There's talk of it happening in the spring term, which would mean that some parents may be forced to pull out their students in the middle of exam season, which does seem quite strange. And then the NHS waiting list admitting last night that it could take till the end of the first term, if they're going for a second, to even make headway on bringing those down.
It was interesting. I mean, he tried to frame that as a kind of positive. He said, I'm not going to give you sort of false promises. But it was a reminder, actually, that, the Labour Party actually isn't promising very much that's different. There isn't really going to be a lot of actual change on the ground in terms of public services after this election, despite change being the kind of watchword of Labour's policy. Whenever you look at what is being offered, it's incredibly thin. It's very, very similar to what the Conservatives are offering.
Yeah. Within all of this, I'll tell you what has really struck me in this campaign is that we seem to be working, more than anything else, we seem to be working not on any hard facts. Nothing in black and white. It's all speculation. Are they going to put taxes up? Are you going to put taxes up? It's literally everything is up for grabs in all of this, and it's just a case of people saying, well, what do I really believe in?
Yeah, you're right. It seems as if we're hearing more about, say, Labour's potential policies from the Tories and vice versa. We hear about Labour's, potential tax bombshell on savers. I mean, they've announced no such thing. Labour say the Tories are going to essentially, abolish all taxes and therefore your pension, which is, again, also nonsense. Kind of a lot of mudslinging, but not enough clarity. I think one problem is that essentially because neither leader really has much vision, I think there's quite a big void, and that can be filled with speculation.
Yeah.
We don't really know where they stand on the big issues. They don't really stand for big principles. So you're just sort of left wondering which tax rate are they going to tinker with?
Yeah, OK. Fraser, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Now, of course, we are the People's Channel, and so we want to hear from you throughout this election campaign. We want to know what you're thinking ahead of the general election. We're going to be talking about issues such as, of course, the NHS waiting lists, the impact of immigration, the cost of living crisis, and crime and policing. So our reporters have been to meet voters across all 4 nations.
So let's bring you the latest now in our People's Voice series.
Hi, I'm Michael Decker. I'm in my 60s and I live in beautiful Crawley. Issues that are important to me this time are UK manufacturing, housing, and of course Gaza. Since the early 80s, I've grown and typically sold companies. I started out as a Thatcher voter. I thought that she was good for the country, the Tories were good for the country. After the first Gulf War in the 90s, I moved leftwards. The Green Party obviously has got green in its name. That's attractive, not least because I'm a vegetarian Tesla driver. But in all seriousness, they are saying we will recognise Palestine. We will not sell arms to Israel. Sunak always talks about growth, but we don't make anything anymore. We make Barber jackets, whiskey, you know, that's pretty much about it. We've got to get back to manufacturing. Housing, we have to have more housing, particularly social housing. Most of it was sold off. We need to be building. It's going to be my first vote ever for the Green Party. Yes, it's a protest vote, but I'm voting for them to do well in the next election, because I think that when people see that people are voting for the Green Party in this election, next time they will think, well, actually, maybe they are viable for government.
Well, that's his point of view. You will have your own. Do let us know what it is, gbnews.com/yoursay. I'm slightly confused when he says he wants to see more production, more manufacturing in the UK. Well, you wonder, how do you do that in a particularly green way? I know there must be ways of doing it.
And he wants to be green, doesn't he?
I don't know how green you could be immediately with that. I don't know. But anyway, that's his point of view. And, of course, everyone's fighting for your vote. So you've got to listen to it all and then work it out for yourself.
Now, at 17 minutes past 6, the search for the missing teenager, Jay Slater, has now entered its 5th day in Tenerife. It's after he was last heard from on Monday morning.
Well, a friend of his has hit out at the police in Spain saying they're not doing enough.
Well, the 19-year-old called a friend to say he was lost with no water and his phone was on 1% battery.
Let's talk to former Scotland Yard detective Peter Blexley. Peter, I mean, this is so similar to the conversation we were having about Michael Mosley, isn't it? And I hate to say we know how that one worked out. I mean, day 5 in these conditions, it doesn't look good, does it?
No, I'm afraid it doesn't. As Ellie alluded to, no battery in his phone, no water, unfamiliar terrain. Apparently he'd injured his leg on a cactus and simply didn't know where he was or the right direction to travel. So putting all of those matters together, I'm afraid it paints a rather gloomy picture. And with each and every passing day, I fear that this may well be a story that does not have a happy ending.
Well, the 5th day of this search, Peter, is very distressing for so many people, but especially for Jay Slater's mother. We heard from her yesterday. She thinks that this could also be a story of kidnap, doesn't she? She was talking about a Snapchat that she had received, telling her to kiss her son goodbye. How do you think police detectives in Spain will be dealing with that?
Well, we shall have to simply wait and see. There is, of course, a very famous case across the world which was conducted by the Portuguese police, and I'm talking about the disappearance of Madeleine McKellen. And that investigation, particularly in the early stages, fell way, way short of what you would have expected with a similar investigation had that been conducted in the UK, for example. With regards to the actual search, I think the Spanish authorities have probably put out as many resources as they were able to summons in a short space of time. But there must very much be a detective input here, speaking to Jay's mother, speaking to other people who may have been at the music festival that we know he was at on Sunday evening, perhaps even the last people that were to see Jay. They would very much need to be interviewed. So my advice to the investigators would be consider all options. Don't get drawn down a particular rabbit hole, because so often in cases like this, you can be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, it must be hugely difficult when there are all these different avenues to pursue, Peter. I mean, from an investigation point of view, how do you avoid getting pulled down that rabbit hole?
Keep all options open. Absolutely anything is possible. Keep all options on the table, investigate all of them, and only when a particular theory or line of investigation has been ruled out entirely, irrevocably, then do you move on or consider the remaining options. But yeah, everything's got to be on the table, everything has to be considered, and everything needs to be investigated.
A friend of Jay has claimed that Spanish police are not doing enough. They say that they've been too slow to act. In situations like this, Peter, is time of the essence? Is it important to act quickly, or do you need to be very methodical about things?
Yes, of course. You're always up against a ticking clock with any form of investigation, and the sooner evidence can be gathered, then the more beneficial that is for any investigation. I can understand frustrations with the authorities out there, and I'm not going to leap wholeheartedly to the defence of the Spanish, but we do know they've utilised a helicopter, drones, search dogs, a mountain rescue team, firefighters who are experienced in this terrain with fighting wildfires, for example, and police officers. So I'm sure they've deployed everything that they could do. Whether they draw in other resources from the mainland, for example, we will simply have to wait and see.
OK. Peter, for now, thanks very much indeed. Of course, we'll keep you up to date with any developments on that as soon as we hear anything.
Now, at 22 minutes past 6, let's take a look at some other stories coming into the newsroom this morning.
Well, as we've sort of mentioned at the top of the show, the Prime Minister said he's incredibly angry to learn about Tory figures allegedly betting on the election date. Conservative candidate Laura Saunders, her husband Tony Lee, who's campaign director for the Conservative Party, are both under scrutiny over the allegations. It comes after another Tory candidate, Craig Williams, admitted to an error of judgment after placing a bet on when the election would take place.
Boris Johnson is promising an honest, unrestrained and deeply revealing account of his time in Downing Street with his new memoir. The book, titled Unleashed, will hit the shelves in October and will also cover his time as Mayor of London.
And the Prince of Wales is 42 today. Prince William was at the Euros last night cheering on England as they played, sort of, Denmark. He was pictured alongside Denmark's King Frederick as the two teams went head-to-head in Frankfurt.
That looks quite nice, doesn't it?
Yeah, they posted a picture on Instagram as well.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, just saying, you know, may the best side win and all that. All very nice.
Good sportsmanship, that's nice.
Of course, neither side won, so there you go, says it all.
It was a bit of a rubbish game, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Paul Coyte's going to bring us all the details on that.
Yeah.
But it was a washout, a disappointment.
Yeah. I don't know what's wrong with them. I feel like they just need a bit of a
kick.
Boost. Yeah. The last two games, I feel like they've just been very relaxed.
Need to kick up the rear end.
And I'm not usually into my football, but it's the one time of year, actually once every, is it 4 years? Once every 2 years? I don't know, we'll ask Paul Coyte. But anyway, when the Euros comes around, that's when I'm interested. And I pretend like I know what I'm talking about. And I think they could do better.
Yeah. Right.
My hot take.
Well, no, it's very good.
Thank you.
It's a nice thing.
And you said the same thing yesterday.
Yeah, same thing, because I'm not really into watching, but I like to watch England.
Yes,
I don't watch
that's
the
where I'm
Premiership. Yeah, but I like to watch England. But it was disappointing last night. Disappointing. Fascinating hearing Alan Shearer on the commentary, because he was getting in a right state about
was
it all.
He
was furious. Just furious with the way it was all being handled.
Ooh.
So I take my lead from Alan Shearer.
Well, there you go. Yes, I think that's a good place to take your lead from.
Right, let's take our weather lead from Andy Shuttleworth this morning.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's going to be another fairly dry and bright day for most of us, warmest in the south and east once again, but some rain is arriving later on today from the west. That's a weather front moving into parts of Northern Ireland through this morning and into western areas of Scotland by this afternoon. And we will see some rain on that this evening across this far south and west. But ahead of it, another dry and fine day. Plenty of sunshine around, high UV levels as well. It's going to feel warm in that June sunshine, highs of 24, 25 degrees across the southeast, but up to the low 20s up across northeastern areas of England, southeastern Scotland even as well. But into this evening, that wet weather will make its progress a little bit further east. Not going to bring too much in the way of heavier rain, but it certainly will turn cloudier from the west. So parts of the Highlands, the Western Isles seeing some of that rain. Northern Ireland could see some heavier showers breaking out as well. But further east across northeastern England, actually it'll still be a fairly dry and bright evening. Temperatures still pretty high as well to end the day. Into Devon and Cornwall as well, we could see some of that wet weather, particularly on the coast and high ground is where we're most likely to see that rain. Now this rain is going to move eastwards through the night to central areas of England, and it will likely lie across the southeast of England by the morning. It'll introduce quite a lot of cloud around, and there will just be some light drizzly rain on and off for many areas of the UK. Still fairly mild though, temperatures not dipping much below 10 degrees quite widely. Now it does turn a bit clearer, but to the west of this weather front, so across Northern Ireland and Scotland, it will be a fine start to the weekend. And actually across parts of Wales, the southwest should brighten up quite quickly as well. Some cloud will likely linger for more eastern areas of England, southeast and Scotland as well. There could be a few showers around too, but it's still going to be feeling warm despite the less in the way of sunshine. Temperatures still climbing towards 23 degrees. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, time for the Great British Giveaway now. It's your chance to win prizes worth more than £16,000.
Yes, we caught up with a previous winner, John from North Yorkshire, who got his £20,000 prize from us this week. Lucky John, that must be nice. Here's what he had to say about it.
Hi, I'm John from sunny North Yorkshire, and I've just won £20,000 in the GB News Great British Giveaway. Well, there I was, sitting in the garden with a cup of coffee, and then I got this phone call out of the blue, and I thought, what's this about? And then it all became apparent. I have to say, I kept thinking several times a day, wow, I've got £20,000 coming. That's fantastic. And then, of course, when it arrived, but I do have something to spend it on. I've never actually won anything like this before, but of course if you're not in you can't win, but it didn't cost much to enter, and here I am having won £20,000, and that's tax-free, so I'm rather pleased I did it.
I bet you are, John. Enjoy having a good old spend. Well, you could be our next big winner with £15,000 in cash and a whole host of goodies. Here's how.
Don't miss out on your chance to win our Summer Spectacular. And have we got a prize for you? First, there's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction. So you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck. Now, we've been talking about that game, about England and Denmark last night. It wasn't good, was it? We're going to have some actual professional analysis, you'll be pleased to know, with Paul Coit. That's next.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Theatres and drama schools are being offered plus-size inclusivity training. Come on, seriously, is this really a thing? In order to tackle fat phobia, to apparently make the theatre more inclusive for bigger bodies, a lady called Ruth Ann Phillips, who is a plus-size theatre director, she's behind the drive. Now, apparently, her own research, so it's not exactly independent, showed that 9 out of 10 respondents should have training on size inclusion. Ruth is also the co-founder of Inclusion Collective, which is an organisation that provides training in creative well-being, body positivity and inclusive movement. Her website contains resources on fat activism, advocacy for the rights and dignity of fat people, combating discrimination and the body-conscious scale. This is actually about health. Ruth is conflating the two. Professor Carol Sikora, a consultant oncologist, said normalising obesity has become fashionable in advertising and the media, simply to sell stuff. But it's got nothing to do with celebrating diversity. Nobody needs to be fat. It's like encouraging risky behaviours such as smoking, driving after a booze-up or lying like a lobster on the beach in the sun. A balanced diet and lots of exercise are the cornerstones of a healthy lifestyle. He went on to say, how could anybody possibly justify these projects? Plus size, inclusivity training, please bring back common sense. Well, exactly. I'm for equal opportunity and for giving people credit based on merit and what they bring to the table, even if it is food. Only joking. That's where the way to my heart is through my gut. I'm looking for a man that can cook. But in truth, being obese can be dangerous. And whilst I absolutely agree you should love what God gave you, obesity is the biggest killer and costs the health service a fortune. People come in all shapes and sizes, and it's a wonderful thing. But to conflate body positivity with obesity is very dangerous.
The People's Channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting.
I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have said Stump. You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
6:32. Right, let's get the lowdown on last night. Paul Coy is here.
It's really low as well. The lowdown is really low.
I haven't thought, 18 minutes in, thought it was going so well.
Yeah. Welcome to watching England. That's what it's all about. So England won. Denmark won. Very underwhelming. Everybody's unhappy with it. You won't find anybody that's going to go, oh, well, there are positives there. It just weren't. The thing is, I look at it and we've got fantastic footballers that are playing in that side. There's no question. But there's the old greater than the sum of their parts, and unfortunately, that's how football should be, whereas I think England are complete opposite to that. The parts all add up to less than the actual team should be, if you see what I mean.
What is going on with it all? Because it's just not a cohesive unit.
No. I mean, I wish I knew, and I've spoken to so many people. We're going to have Mark Lawrenson who's going to join us after 8 o'clock, so maybe he can pick through the bones of it a little bit more. But it's just looking at it now, is it the players? Is it Gareth Southgate? But what seems to be happening, which everybody's agreed on, is that England go ahead, like you said, the first 18 minutes, things are looking OK. They're playing good football. It's a little side to side for my liking. It's not quite as attacking and exciting as when you see Spain and other countries. But OK, they get the goal. But then the big complaint is England seem to sit back and then they get hit. Now, the other school of thought on this is that actually what's happening is that with Serbia and also with Denmark, maybe what it is that because they've gone behind, that then they're having a go at England. So maybe it's the other way round, that maybe the other sides are sitting back a little bit, which means that England are doing a little better before they score. And then when England score, then they seem to be a bit more on the back foot. But all it is, and we can get into all of this, but it's this well-oiled machine that's supposed to be is just very rusty and it's not very good. And I worry. And if we're going to be playing really great teams like your France and your Spain, etc., you worry and think, well, unless they up their game, we're going to be in all sorts of trouble.
I mean, we should have been guaranteed a spot in the last 16.
Yeah, we will be. We'll be fine. Because we're on 4 points now.
Yeah, but even so, we should have won last night.
Yeah, we should have. Should we hear what Gareth Southgate had to say?
Oh, yeah, go on.
Let's hear from the manager, and this is what Gareth said last night after the game.
We need to look, clearly, we're disappointed with the level of the two performances we've had. So we've got to go and analyse that in depth and find some solutions to addressing the issues that we have. And over the next few days, we'll spend a lot of time doing that. We know the level has to be higher. We know the level can be higher. Maybe the biggest thing is we have to accept the environment that we're in and the expectations that are around us.
See, even that is really lacklustre.
Well, that's what I was going to say. What did you get from that?
Nothing.
Nothing. You learnt nothing. Or it could have been anybody. You could have put anybody there and say, well, obviously it's not how we want it. We're going to work on that, and hopefully going forward it's just blah, 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 blah. It's just a load of old noise.
I mean, I like Gareth Southgate.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he said after the last game, yeah, we didn't play very well. We need to play better in the next game. And they've played worse.
They did play worse. True. And the other thing...
So what's he saying to them?
I don't know. See, the other thing that was asked is it you? Is it the tactics?
Oh.
Is there a reason why England is sitting back? No, I'm not telling them that. So, well, where's it coming from? You know, Trent Alexander-Arnold, there's this... The experiment of putting him in midfield. I don't want to get too technical about the whole situation, but he's a right back and they've moved him and thought, oh, yeah, this is going to be the future. That's not working. And he's talking about old players that aren't there and this is the problem. And Calvin Phillips, we miss him. You know, he hasn't played for ages. And it's like, well, look at the talent that's on show. Something should be working. And maybe we look at the manager and say, well, it's up to you to get all these great players working, because if it's not working together, there's got to be some sort of problem, because it should work. It just doesn't make sense. Maybe we could look on the bright side. We could try and look on the bright side and think, well, when there's been decent tournaments, they've been slow starts, and then eventually we get going. But looking at it last night, it's going to be hard to try and...
Can I share some GB News views with you?
Yes, please do.
Tell me what you think.
I think I can imagine what you say.
Christine Gray says it's the manager.
Right.
Nick replied to that saying, ever since Gareth Southgate stopped wearing the waistcoat, they just haven't been so good.
You know what? That's a very, very good point. Since he stopped wearing the waistcoat and that zip-up thing, things have just...
And Kirsty says they need to play Cole Palmer. He was on the bench, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was on the bench. And the thing is, we will always look... If things aren't working, any football fan or anybody will always go, if we had him on... But maybe he would make a difference. I think he will make an appearance. I would say definitely against Slovenia.
Maybe they need to mix it up. And then the last one from John Andrews, who says the players just look very tired on the pitch. Looks like they're having late nights and parties.
I don't think they're having late nights and parties, but it was lacklustre. There's too much walking around. It's like walking football. Walk to say, better. It's not exciting to watch, is it? It's not exciting, and that's what we need.
All right, can we have a look at Kylian Mbappe?
Yes.
Because I thought he was going to be done because he's broken his nose.
Well, his nose was... He went into a defender and it was into the shoulder, and his nose was just all over the place. So he's now got this mask that he is going to wear. Who is the man behind the mask? It's Kylian Mbappe.
I mean, it's quite something.
I think we've got pictures of the mask here. Although I must say that we've got pictures of a mask that he wore in training, which is all very nice. It's got the French flag on it. It's got his initials. It's got his number. Although under UEFA rules, he's not allowed to wear like a branded mask. Oh, there we are. Let's have a look at this. There he is. Let's see the mask, Kylian. Let's see it there. Okay, let's have a look. It is very nice. It's a very nice mask. Pull it down over there. Look at that. Very nice.
Well, that's not branded, though, is it?
Well, when I say branded, it's got the little French emblem there, and
that's all right though.
For the French Football Authority, and he's got the French flag. Apparently, none of that is allowed. I don't know why not. It's not like it's got Nike written down the side, and it's got his initials, and so they spent so much time making this mask look really nice. Oh, there we are. Look at this. But it's all moulded and it's all... What are the 3D printer machines?
Oh, yeah.
It's all done with that. I don't know how that works.
It's impressive, though. There'd be a fashion accessory, that, before you know it.
I'm not being funny, but I was thinking of wearing one.
Yeah.
I thought I could be like Zorro.
There you go. That'll be the way. Can we just, before... Because we're almost out of time, can we just have a look at...
you take your pick. You tell me what you fancy. There's so much.
I want to look at Rafael Fentedama.
Rafael Fentedama.
Oh, Damir.
Well, no, you're probably right. I don't know whether... I'll tell you about him. I don't know if we've got any footage of him just yet. Teenage French swimmer. How unlucky is this? So he's qualified for the Olympics in the 100 metres. So excited. You know what they often do when they celebrate? They slam their hand down on the water. So he's gone like these... and then he slammed his hand down, and then as he slammed his hand down on the water, his shoulder popped out. So he's actually dislocated his shoulder while celebrating, which is not really what you want. So he's gone on the blocks, and he's standing there. It was like Napoleon. You think you're going to put a hat on him as well? So he's like this, getting his medal, but hopefully he'll be fit for for the Olympics, but a lot of swimmers they can easily dislocate their shoulders because they can move. That's how they manage to do the butterfly, etc. so well. So you may be okay. Not that we're bothered because he's a French swimmer.
But you don't.
I mean, I want him to. Obviously, I want him to be all right, but I don't want him to get a medal because I don't want him to affect our chances.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
There we are. Did I get away with that?
Just about.
Just about.
Thank you, Paul Coy.
Thank you.
Now, do stay with us. Next up, we're going to be going through the papers with real-life husband and wife duo Nigel Nelson and Claire Pearsall.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M6 in the West Midlands, 2 lanes are closed southbound for an investigation. There's also a breakdown near to Junction 5 near Birmingham. There are queues from Junction 6 at Spaghetti Junction. The A1M in Hertfordshire is closed in both directions for an investigation between Junction 6 and 8 between Welwyn Garden City and Stevenage. Diversions through Stevenage and Nebworth. On the M26 in Kent, there are westbound queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks. In West Sussex, the westbound exit from the A27 to the A283 at Shoreham remains closed for emergency bridge repairs. Train services are suspended between Bath Spa and Westbury, where overnight engineering works have overrun. And in Devon on the A30, there's a lane closed westbound for repairs between Broadwood, Widger and Lifton Down. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The University of Cambridge has told students to stop flirting with staff under a new policy banning sexual relationships with professors. The new rules, which come into force next month, beginning of July, include a warning against behaviour that could be interpreted as flirtatious. University staff have been told they must report any behaviour that could constitute a student making advances towards a personal, particularly intimate relationship with them. If you're a tutor, how do you interpret what is flirting and what is just sort of like having a bit of banter?
In fact, you've got to
Very nice trousers, by the way.
Thank you.
You see, you didn't even recognise.
Oh, I didn't. I think I'm blushing now. I'm blushing.
So, what's flirting? What's me complimenting your very well-fitting trousers? Yes.
Well, there is a line, because obviously when you're 18 and you go to university, it might be the first time you're away from home. It might be the first time that you're open to maybe a bit of a nightlife, social activity, drinking, and all the rest of it. On the flip side, I know a couple who, the pupil ended up dating their professor, and they've been together for about sort of 15 years now. So I used to go after lectures with my professor and the whole seminar. We used to go to the pub afterwards, and I became very good friends with. She was a mature student. She was on the very, very far left of political. You wondered where that was going for a second, didn't you?
We're both reading a huge sigh of relief.
Very quick for you, Joe. We're running out of very nice trousers as well. We're running
Thank you. Not as snug as Charlie. I think you've got to have some rules in place that there's no abuse of power. Policing it's difficult. We ought to be in a position where you can say, get off, back off, or, banter's fine. Actually, I hate that word. I hate it almost as much as woke. Go on, email in.
Thank you very much. I'm flirting with both.
The People's Channel.
Time to have a look at some of the newspapers at 6:44. And the Times leads with the PM declaring his intention to take strict action against those found to be betting on the election date.
The Guardian reports on former Conservative Energy Minister Chris Skidmore announcing his intention to vote Labour.
The Mail has Keir Starmer saying Jeremy Corbyn would have been a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson.
The Telegraph also leads with the Labour leader supporting Corbyn over Johnson.
And the Mirror reports on the Tory betting scandal.
Well, joining us now to go through what's making the news this morning is GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall. Very good morning to you both.
Morning.
And Nigel, should we start with you? And these are comments made by Sir Keir Starmer on that special election programme last night, saying that Jeremy Corbyn would have made a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson?
Well, it's very difficult to think of anyone who'd made a worse Prime Minister than Boris Johnson. So I can...
A lot of people would disagree with you on that,
I think a lot of people would disagree, but a lot of people like Boris Johnson for his campaigning skills, of which he's a master. I mean, there's no question about that. But as a Prime Minister, not so good. No attention to detail, got bored easily. And I do wonder if Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell actually might have handled COVID a lot better. You would have
Really?
Well, you'd had Jonathan Ashworth as Health Secretary at the time rather than Matt Hancock. So, I mean, they may have done. I mean,
I can't imagine Jeremy Corbyn handling anything better.
Well, we didn't vote for him. We decided against it. I mean, the whole...
And he was the biggest turn-off for Labour's massive defeat, was Jeremy Corbyn.
Yes, I mean, it was an experiment, if you like. We did the same experiment in 1983.
You're floundering as much as Keir Starmer was last night.
Keir Starmer has a problem. I appreciate he has a real problem with Jeremy Corbyn, saying that he would make a great Prime Minister. Great is probably overdoing it somewhat, but is a question of what Keir Starmer should have done instead. That Rachel Reeves and Yvette Cooper sat out the Corbyn years on the back benches. They became select committee chairs, which in fact is probably a much better job than being in the shadow cabinet. Keir Starmer decided he would work from within the shadow cabinet. That means collective responsibility and supporting the leader.
Claire? I mean, you married him.
You know when you start, when somebody's talking and you just look at them and you go, have you lost your mind? Should we just start with the fact that this is the same Jeremy Corbyn that Keir Starmer has gone to great lengths to distance himself from, saying that this is a changed Labour Party, we're not Corbyn supporters, nothing to do with us, Gov. And this is also the same Jeremy Corbyn. Do you remember the Salisbury poisonings?
Yes.
We all remember those. This is the same Jeremy Corbyn that wanted Russia to have part of the process to look and see if it really was a nerve agent from Russia, and he wanted to have a nice little chat with them in the vain hope that it wouldn't be them, it would be somebody else. I mean, how you can think that he would be a good Prime Minister, great Prime Minister, any kind of Prime Minister is beyond me. We'll put Boris Johnson to one side because I have views on his capabilities.
A great Prime Minister in Boris Johnson?
Everybody knows how I feel about Boris Johnson, so it's not a surprise. No, not a great Prime Minister, a great campaigner, full stop. But Jeremy Corbyn was told by the public on at least 2 different occasions that they weren't interested in what he had to offer. So why Sir Keir Starmer feels that it's now time to invoke the ghost of Corbyn is beyond me, and he's spent all of his time distancing himself from it. So it was a ridiculous comment. It just sort of makes his argument so weak and feeble that you sort of look at him and go, well, what do you support?
Why couldn't he be honest when he's asked about this and say, and pretty much as you said, and said, well, look, I was in the cabinet, collective responsibility, this is just what you have to say.
Yeah, and actually, I wish he'd done that. I wish he'd done that right from the start, and he wouldn't be in the pickle he's got himself into now, because that's exactly right. It is quite simply, if you choose that route, you can argue whether or not he should have stayed in shadow cabinet, probably wouldn't have been leader if he hadn't been. But if you do that route, you've got to support whoever your leader is. And the only alternative then is to try and bring that leader down, which obviously is what happened to Boris Johnson and then subsequently Liz Truss.
Claire, should we take a look at the Times, shall we? And this is the Tory betting scandal. Rishi Sunak saying last night that he's incredibly angry about it.
Yes, I mean, that's the Prime Minister looking incredibly angry. It didn't really come across as very angry to me. The whole thing is rotten. The whole betting scenario hasn't been the best look. I don't think that the Prime Minister's response to it has been anywhere near strong enough.
Should they have been suspended?
I think it's very difficult to suspend people in the middle of a general election campaign. We're 13 days out from polling day. What are you supposed to do? They're on the ballot paper.
But then you say it looks rotten, and I think there will be people
it
across
absolutely
the country who
does.
think it looks rotten.
Do you know what? I think the public are going to make their minds up. This may well just be the final straw for people who were giving him one last chance. And that I don't think that whatever action he takes is going to be enough to satisfy anybody with what has gone on. You can't defend it. It is appalling. He looked defeated, I think, last night, not really angry. I think it's just yet another thing that has come up.
I mean, you couldn't
every single day we have another.
You couldn't make it up.
You can't.
I mean, on this, I feel a bit sorry for him. I mean, the D-Day thing was his own fault, but it's just issue after issue after issue keeps coming up, which is just another kick.
I mean, nothing's gone right at all, has it? That's the point. Right from the start, since the downpour hit him in Downing Street when he announced the election.
And when you're in charge of an election timetable, you've made the decision to call it. The odds should be almost in your favour as to how a campaign plays out. But it seems like this has almost caught everybody by surprise. I wouldn't be surprised if the next thing is somebody kicking a Labrador puppy, because every single day there is something, and I think I've seen it. I think I've seen the worst thing, and then the next thing comes along, and I'm just gobsmacked that here we are.
I mean, unless they come up with some kind of reasonable explanation for what happened, which we haven't heard, they're not being criminally investigated, at least not yet. So it's a gambling commission investigation. It means they can actually defend themselves. If they have a good reason for what they did, that might change the dial a bit, but at the moment, I'd have thought you suspend them immediately.
But they're still going to be on the ballot paper.
They'll be on the ballot paper anyway,
so if they were elected, they'd be independents.
They would, yes.
Well, the Tory party would rather just have them on board, wouldn't they?
Well, I mean...
to be honest, look at the numbers.
What Rishi Sunak said was, if there is wrongdoing, they would be chucked out of the Tory party. Yeah. So we don't know. I mean, these are allegations that nothing is proven is proved yet. But in the event that he suspended them now, should they become MPs, they would have to sit as independents because they wouldn't have the Tory whip.
But it's just an open goal, isn't it, for the Lib Dems? It's an open goal for Labour. Sir Keir Starmer yesterday saying, I would have suspended them. There would have been swift action from me.
Hang on a second. Yeah. Should we just sort of step back a little bit? There was a by-election not long ago in the north of the country. I don't wish to mention the seat because I don't want you to have to read out endless candidates, where the Labour candidate in that by-election had made an awful lot of pretty appalling comments regarding Israel, and Sir Keir Starmer sat on his hands about that candidate for a considerable period of time. So it's all very well to say, their feet wouldn't have touched the ground, I would have had them out straight away, when his own behaviour only a few months ago denies that completely.
Yeah, what he did do, in fact, he didn't sit on his hands for some time. It was a couple of days. He should have made the decision earlier. I agree with that. But at least Labour withdrew any support from him and made it clear he would not sit.
Under enormous pressure.
He would not sit as a Labour MP had he been elected in the House of Commons.
So it's no different to the position that Rishi Sunak has taken. And this is my point, that I don't really want lectures
Rishi Sunak hasn't actually withdrawn support as yet. All he said is he's incredibly angry. Well, do something about that anger.
We don't know what has gone on in the background, and I'm not wishing to defend anybody, but I think it's fair to say that you don't know what conversations have been had with certain candidates in the background away from media glare. We don't know that. No. We don't know what the process is going to be. So I think that today will be quite important because the question isn't going to go away. But I don't really want to take lectures from Sir Keir Starmer when his actions themselves have been exactly the same.
Me either, obviously.
No. I think could be one of those mornings today. We're out of time, you two. We will see you both a little bit later on. Claire Pearsall, Nigel Nelson.
Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you.
Get your thoughts into us as well. Let's get your weather now with Annie.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's going to be another fairly dry and bright day for most of us, warmest in the south and east once again, but some rain is arriving later on today from the west. That's a weather front moving into parts of Northern Ireland through this morning and into western areas of Scotland by this afternoon. And we will see some rain on that this evening across this far south and west. But ahead of it, another dry and fine day. Plenty of sunshine around, high UV levels as well. It's going going to feel warm in that June sunshine, highs of 24, 25 degrees across the southeast, but up to the low 20s up across northeastern areas of England, southeastern Scotland even as well. But into this evening, that wet weather will make its progress a little bit further east. Not going to bring too much in the way of heavier rain, but it certainly will turn cloudier from the west. So parts of the Highlands, the Western Isles seeing some of that rain. Northern Ireland could see some heavier showers breaking out as well. But further east across northeastern England, actually will still be a fairly dry and bright evening. Temperatures still pretty high as well to end the day. Into Devon and Cornwall as well, we could see some of that wet weather, particularly on the coast and high ground is where we're most likely to see that rain. Now this rain is going to move eastwards through the night to central areas of England, and it will likely lie across the southeast of England by the morning. It'll introduce quite a lot of cloud around, and there will just be some light drizzly rain on and off for many areas of the UK. Still fairly mild though, temperatures not dipping much below 10 degrees quite widely. Now it does turn a bit clearer, but to the west of this weather front, so across Northern Ireland and Scotland, it will be a fine start to the weekend. And actually across parts of Wales, the southwest should brighten up quite quickly as well. Some cloud will likely linger for more eastern areas of England, southeastern Scotland as well. There could be a few showers around too, but it's still going to be feeling warm despite the less in the way of sunshine. Temperatures still climbing towards 23 degrees. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the A1 in West Yorkshire, it's taking around 10 minutes in northbound queues heading into the roadworks at Went Bridge. The A1M in Hertfordshire is closed in both directions between junctions 8 and 6 between Stevenage and Welwyn Garden City for an investigation. Delays as you divert through Stevenage and Nebworth. On the M26 in Kent, it's slow westbound getting onto the M25 because of a lane closure for roadworks. In West Sussex on the A27, the westbound exit to the A283 at Shoreham by Sea is closed for emergency bridge repairs. Train services are suspended between Bath Spa and both Westbury and Swindon, where overnight engineering works have overrun. And in Devon on the A30, there's a lane closed westbound for emergency repairs between Stoford Cross and the Lifton Down turn-off. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
There's still time to win our Summer Spectacular with an incredible trio of treats, and you could win them. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Camilla Tominey. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock on Friday, the 21st of June. Today, the battle for number 10. Party leaders faced another grilling on last night's televised election programme, but who came out on top?
The hunt for Jay Slater, the missing teenager in Tenerife, has now entered its 5th day. A friend claims the Spanish police are not doing enough.
Hollywood icon Donald Sutherland has died at the age of 88. We'll look back on a career which spanned more than 7 decades.
Thousands of people have flocked to Stonehenge this morning to celebrate the summer solstice, marking the beginning of the astronomical summer.
Working from home, productive, or just a licence to be lazy? We'll debate that later on.
I could make a link from lazy to England, but I just think it's probably not a good idea. But in the sport, good news is England currently atop of Group C, but the bad news is that they were really bad against Denmark yesterday. We'll talk about that later. Kylian Mbappe returns to France, or for France, in Germany against the Netherlands tonight with a mask. There it is. And in tennis, Britain's #1 Jack Draper beat Carlos Alcaraz at Queen's, which is the first time a Brit's knocked out a top seed there for 52 years. So some good news.
Good morning. It's another sunny day for many of us, but there is some rain due later. You can find out all the details with me a little later on.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
I'm slightly disturbed that you've just been gushing over Kylian Mbappe.
No. I said he looked like a frog, but in a good way. He's got a look of a frog. Paul Coit said he looks like a Ninja Turtle. So there's definitely a green kind of look around about him. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, actually, I don't. I think you've just dug yourself into a whole load of hot water.
You just said you could see it with a Ninja Turtle.
Shh.
Exactly. Look, he's throwing me under the bus and he's right there with me.
You do, yeah.
You're coming down with me.
I do think in the weird world of football and fashion that actually those masks are going to become a thing now.
No, really? I don't.
Yeah, you can see teenagers just getting them. Someone will start making them, flogging them. They'll cost peanuts to make on those 3D printers.
Maybe that's what this is about. You know, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with the masks. He is trying to be the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There you go. That's what he's trying to make happen.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm not sure it's going to catch on.
No, maybe not. But there you go. Stranger things have happened.
Loads of you getting in touch this morning. Let me just dig through and find some nice ones. Have you seen any good ones here?
No, I just saw my name pop up there. It's
Mick Malone says Nigel Farage came out on top, Stephen. He was excluded by the BBC.
Yeah, I think that was very odd.
Strange.
In a leaders' debate last night. And if it's the fight for number 10, as they call it, where it's the two people who at least have the possibility of being Prime Minister this time round, then I think that's fair enough. But to include last night the SNP, of course, which most of us can't vote for, and the Lib Dems, who reforms generally... in fact, for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, the Reform have been polling above the Lib Dems. I cannot understand why you wouldn't invite Reform on.
Especially when it's on the eye this morning. Reform and the Tories now neck and neck, a 5% leap for Farage in the past couple of days.
So why wouldn't you invite them on? Well, invite Nigel on. So that, to me, just seems very... If you're gonna give a balanced option for people, to make up their minds and cast their vote, then he should have been on, whether you agree with what he's proposing or not. That's how it works in this country. So that I'm very confused as to why that didn't happen. So as it turns out, it was the leader of the Conservatives, Labour, Lib Dem and SNP. All grilled by the public in that BBC election special last night.
Well, the Prime Minister said he was incredibly angry to learn about Tory figures allegedly betting on the date of the election.
Ed Davey taken to task over his handling of the post office scandal.
And Sir Keir Starmer said Jeremy Corbyn would have made a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson.
All right, well, bearing all that in mind, let's have a look back at the last 24 hours in politics.
Well, like you, I was incredibly angry. incredibly angry to learn of these allegations. It's a really serious matter. It's right that they're being investigated properly by the relevant law enforcement authorities, including, as Fiona said, a criminal investigation by the police.
Migration is at record levels at the moment under this government. They've completely lost control. We need to get that number down. We need to get it significantly down. I'm not going to put an arbitrary figure on it, because every single politician who's put a number on it has never met that number.
When Alan Bates wrote to me, I'd been in office about 2 weeks, and I wrote to him and said, no, this is a matter for the Post Office, we don't govern it, and I'm not going to meet you. He wrote back furious, he did, and then I read his letter and said, well, I better meet him. And I met him in October, as you said, Fiona, and I took all his questions and I asked them to my officials and to the Post Office. And they gave me a categorical assurance that the points that Mr. Bates was making were not true.
When Labour launched their manifesto last week, there were 6 key objectives. Not one of them mentioned legal immigration. Not one of them mentioned the population explosion in this country.
Well, we're joined in the studio by former Labour MP Luciana Berger and the Deputy Editor of Spiked, Fraser Myers. Good to see you both this morning.
Morning.
Look, in terms of a democratic system, Luciana, and bear in mind what the polls are saying at the moment, shouldn't Farage have been involved last night?
Well, obviously, Nigel Farage is quite a late entrant. He's obviously just joined the race in recent weeks.
Yeah, I know, but this was a live TV show. He could have been.
I mean, I'm not involved in the editorial decisions of another media channel.
Well, I know, but in terms of a decent democratic system where we give people the views of the parties who are polling well, and so they can make their own decision, he should have been involved, shouldn't he?
I'm not adverse to having debate with as many people as possible. So, I mean, that was the decision of a broadcaster in this country. It's not within my gift. I'm happy for people to debate with as many people as possible.
Yeah, so right, okay.
I'd be very keen to expose, what I think are many holes and flaws in what Nigel Farage is promising the country, which he won't be able to deliver.
It just seems very odd that it wasn't brought up. What do you think, Fraser?
Yeah, I agree. It seems, slightly unresponsive to what's happening on the ground. I mean, some polls put Reform polling at the same height as the Tories. That might be because maybe there hasn't been the opportunity to scrutinise what they're saying. Actually, a lot of the candidates didn't get to put their best foot forward last night. They got some really good grillings. Even Ed Davey was pulled up on his involvement in the Post Office scandal. It's good to remind people of that. Starmer pulled up on his support for Jeremy Corbyn. Sunak pulled up on his, wacky national service pledge, and basically, sort of 14 years of Tory failures. So, yeah, more exposure, but also more scrutiny would be a good thing.
Yeah. The only slight challenge to that is obviously in terms of the numbers of seats that their support for reform will translate into. The Greens, for example, didn't have a seat at the table yesterday, and they are likely to have as many, if not possibly more, seats that they win at this next general election. So, I imagine that might have featured in the considerations.
Luciana, what did you make of Sir Keir Starmer saying yesterday that Jeremy Corbyn would have made a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson? Because that was eye-catching, wasn't it? Because he spent years distancing himself from Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, there was a few things to know. I mean, that wasn't the kind of first response. It was the response after a number of questions in that segment. So it wasn't the first thing that we heard from Keir Starmer. But I think it's fair to say, at that 2019 election, the choice was abysmal. They were both pretty awful for different reasons. And having campaigned, as I have done in recent weeks across the country, there is no love lost for Boris Johnson. And there's actually a lot of anger. And I would invite anyone, if you haven't had the chance to do so, to go out and knock on doors and hear how people feel about what happened when Boris Johnson was Prime Minister, either because of what he did around Partygate or the way in which he left it under such scandal, or what happened with PPE, or the way in which he made promises to this country, which not only did he not deliver on, but he did completely the opposite. And so for all those reasons, he's done a massive disservice to politics in this country. So it was a pretty bad choice. But I judge Keir Starmer on what he's actually done in a position of leadership. And certainly since he's become leader of the Labour Party, he's completely turned around the Labour Party. And I think it's quite striking that, Jeremy Corbyn is not standing at this election as a Labour candidate. He's standing as an independent. And I think that's reflective of the journey that the Labour Party has been on and how Keir Starmer has sought to bring the party back into the
service of working people.
The issue is, though, Fraser, I mean, look, and it's not that they're not valid points, you know, from that Labour perspective, but the problem is it does seem like it is very much opportunistic, isn't it? I mean, I'm going to voice support for whatever is likely to get me into power. Maybe that's just how politics works.
Yeah, I think probably that is how politics works, but it feels like Keir Starmer is, you know, maybe the most obvious exponent of it. It just feels like he would say one thing to Labour members, and now he says another thing to the country at large. You know, the list of sort of pledges that he's U-turned on is just extraordinary at this point. You know, university, and he was actually taken to task on this last night. You know, from university tuition fees to nationalisation. Now, some of them he had he accounted for. Actually, nationalisation. He said, well, you know, this would be far more expensive than I thought. We would want to concentrate on getting your bills down. That was a good answer, but he couldn't. There are certain things he tried to blame on Liz Truss and the state of the economy, so he blamed that for his flip-flopping over tuition fees. I don't think, you know, another thing he was taken to task on was the sort of the gender debate. You can't blame that on Liz Truss. You know, that's a social issue. That has nothing to do with money or the state of the economy. That's you changing your mind and saying what's convenient at one time and then saying something else when the wind changes.
I don't accept that. I think there's two things to point out. I think back in 2019, Keir Starmer was a member of the shadow cabinet, and like you have members of the cabinet here today that ask very difficult questions, there is something called collective responsibility within our politics, and that means that if you are in a cabinet that you have a responsibility to subscribe to that collective responsibility. I think where we find ourselves today in 2024, quite a number of years after 2019, we are in a completely different landscape, not just because we've experienced a pandemic, a global pandemic, but because we fare really, really badly when it comes to our economy. And that is the reality. You have to contend with the reality in front of you in politics. And if there isn't any money in the coffers, and if, like Liz Truss, you've trashed the economy, then you have to take account of that. You can't just promise things that you can't deliver. And I think what's really important at this election, we heard quite a lot from Keir Starmer in the debate last night, is about how we return that trust to politics, which has been completely eroded, and how he wants to do that. And I think that's really, really important.
Fraser, you mentioned Rishi Sunak being taken to task over national service. Was a bit of it hasn't been mentioned so far in our discussions, but when asked about national service and how you'd make it mandatory, because they've previously ruled out the idea of it being a criminal offence, but he did talk about potentially taking driving licences off of teenagers.
Yes.
Quite alarming, isn't it?
Restricting access to driving, access to finance was another thing he
bank
mentioned.
accounts, yeah.
I mean, he kind of... he didn't really have an answer prepared for it, which is a little bit odd, considering it's, you know, probably the most eye-catching policy in the Tory manifesto. He basically said, look, a royal commission will decide how we actually implement this policy. Again, that's pretty weak. Why can't you come up with ideas? And he just listed off various sort of sanctions that other European countries have for similar schemes. But it did catch him on the hop, and you'd think, again, this is the one thing. One of the few things that, you know, you're offering that's genuinely different, and you can't seem to defend it you can't answer simple questions about how it might work.
It just seems, I mean, to be fair, look, it's a bit of an open gulf in Louisiana, to be fair, but it just seems it's picked a headline-grabbing policy. There's no real thought in it, because he's not expecting to be able to implement it.
I just think on every single count last night, Rishi Sunak let himself down, and because essentially there's so many holes in what he was presenting, it literally felt like he was making it up on the hoof, that he didn't actually know what the answer was in terms of that policy, and certainly in terms of how they're going to pay for that policy, we're not even sure where the money is supposed to be coming from, to the tune of like billions of pounds. So on every single level, like this is supposed to be some like eye-catching element of the Conservative offer. I think the only offer that they're seeking to put forward, and yet he can't answer the detail. And I think he was woefully prepared, and whoever's job it was last night did a terrible job.
And he answered it. He brought it up as an example of what he's doing for young people, whereas actually most young people see it as an imposition rather than a good thing. And his only sort of excuse for that was, well, I met someone who volunteered at St John's Ambulance. And went, well, OK, encourage people to volunteer at St John's Ambulance, then. That's a nice thing to do.
Yeah, maybe it was me. I did St John's Ambulance.
Yeah.
Maybe it was me. No, I don't think I told him about it, though, to be fair.
You didn't have to be forced to
I didn't have to be forced to do it. In terms of how important, Luciana, as someone who's been there and been in the House and all the rest of it, how important do you think transparency is in this election? Is it important to be transparent with the electorate?
I think it's really important to make promises that are costed and that you believe you can deliver.
Right, because this tax issue, right, that keeps coming back, Labour's saying all we get from Labour when we're told about these £2,000, by the end of the Parliament, tax increases. They said, well, we're not going to put up the three main sort of taxes, if you like. But the IFS and others say, well, taxes are going to have to rise somewhere. So taxes are going to go up at some point. So why can't we have that transparency?
Well, there's a few things to say. I think what the country wants at this point, having experiences we have done, like the highest levels of taxation in 70 years, is a party that's committed to not increasing it further. And that's really, really important. And, again, I don't know what opportunities you get to knock on doors and just to speak to people, to kind of hear firsthand. People are really, really struggling, cost of living crisis, and with all the increases that people have seen through their tax as well, this is a really, really difficult time. So it's absolutely right that the Labour Party has put forward that triple lock on not increasing VAT, not increasing national insurance contributions, and not increasing income tax as well. Really, really very important. And having everything that's fully costed. I mean, there's some grey pages within the manifesto. They're not kind of they're all the number pages, but they're the number pages that matter to make sure that people know where the money's going to be coming from. And what the Labour Party has said is about, and what we haven't seen is this stagflation. We haven't seen any growth in our economy. If our economy had grown in the same way since 2010, we would have £150 billion more in this country to make a difference to people right up and down the country on so many different levels. And to have a government, a prospective government, and the only poll that matters is what happens in 2 weeks' time, no one's taking any votes for granted, is to have a plan, as Labour's putting forward, to actually generate and promote growth in this country. And whether it's by creating great British energy, so we are generating energy in this country, not importing it very expensively from other countries, or whether it's the commitments around having a sovereign wealth fund. Many other countries have it. Why don't we? We absolutely should do, and the jobs and growth that will generate. Having that absolute laser focus will make a difference to creating the wealth that we need to see in this country. Fraser, last word from you.
On what in particular?
What Luciana was just saying there about transparency and how important it is.
We know that a tax or some form of tax across the board is going to rise. Whether it's going to be fiscal drag is the preferred option of politicians, this sort of stealth tax. But I don't see why the Labour Party can't be clean about this. I don't think they're going to lose any votes from it, and I think the public is mature enough to understand the sort of fiscal position at the moment. And in fact, if you ask people, what is their preference? So would they rather taxes go up and more money spent on public services, or would they rather have tax cuts? Actually, people say taxes should go up and we need more money for public services. So it's not actually going to, it's not going to upset people to hear the truth. Yeah. We're going to find out eventually.
Labour has been clear about where some of those where the taxes will be coming from and be raised from, whether it's from the energy companies who are benefiting from massive profits and should have those have some taxes on those windfalls, or whether it's closing that non-dom tax loophole. Many different things that Labour Party is pointing to where they will raise that money.
OK, Luciana Berger and Fraser Myers, thank you very much indeed.
Right, let's crack on, should we, with the search for the missing teen Jay Slater. How it's grim. It's thoroughly depressing that we're talking about something very similar to what we saw with Michael Mosley just a couple of weeks ago. Anyway, the search for Jay has entered its 5th day now in Tenerife after he was last heard from on Monday morning.
Yes, now a friend of his has hit out at the Spanish police, claiming that they are not doing enough.
Well, the 19-year-old did call a friend to say he was lost. He said he had no water and his phone was down to 1% battery.
Well, joining us now is our GB News Northwest reporter, Sophie Reaper, who is in Jay's hometown for us this morning. Very good morning to you, Sophie. And this must be such a distressing time for people who know Jay.
Absolutely, and it's one of those cases, isn't it, where every single detail very well could be crucial. So let me just break those down, what we know so far for our viewers at home. We know that Jay flew out to the Spanish island of Tenerife for the NRG Music Festival. He was there on Sunday. In the evening, he told friends that he was going to be leaving with a group of people whom he'd met that day. Around 7:30 in the morning on Monday morning, he posted a Snapchat holding a cigarette at the property property where he had stayed the night previously with 2 men. We then know around an hour later he rang a friend, Lucy, whom he travelled to Tenerife with, when he told her that he'd missed a bus and that he was going to attempt to walk back to their accommodation, a journey that we now know would have taken him around 11 hours on foot. We also know that he told Lucy, he said he was lost in the mountains, he wasn't aware of his surroundings, he desperately needed a drink, and his phone was on 1%. Shortly after this, his phone did cut off and it was last tracked back to the Rural Deteno Park in Tenerife, which, when you look at the satellite images, it's very rocky, it's very remote, incredibly unfamiliar terrain, I'm sure, for Jay. We also know that his mother, Debbie, flew out to the island on Tuesday morning to help Spanish police with the search. She described this as an absolute living nightmare, stating she just wants her baby back. Now, that is a sentiment that's shared here in Jay's hometown of Oswaldtwistle in Lancashire. Yesterday evening, friends and family of Jay's, as well as members of the local community, gathered here at the Methodist Church behind me. They hung blue ribbons as a symbol of hope. I'm sure you can see some of them here on the fence behind me, as well as sharing messages asking for Jay to come home. One person who attended described Jay as one of a kind, stating he was always the life and soul of the party.
OK, Sophie, for now, thanks very much indeed. It's hugely worrying, and it's exactly what we were saying 2 weeks ago. It's the not knowing what on earth is going on. I mean, these clearly are difficult places to search, because otherwise, you know, something would have been discovered by now. There's this, so the business of the very strange messages his mum was getting, which, as Peter Blexley was saying an hour ago, you can't shut that down. It may be unlikely that he's been kidnapped or whatever, but you can't shut down any line of inquiry. You just got to pursue everything at the moment.
Yeah, everything has to be investigated, doesn't it? But as we enter our 5th day, of course, it's getting more and more difficult for the families. You can't even imagine what they're going through, especially his mother, who we've seen across the media in the past few days, just absolutely beside herself. She would be. And she has said she will stay on Tenerife for as long as possible until she finds Jay. So we, of course, will bring you any update on that story on GB News.
Right, time for a check on the weather for you this morning. Here's Annie.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's going to be another fairly dry and bright day for most of us, warmest in the south and east once again, but some rain is arriving later on today from the west. That's a weather front moving into parts of Northern Ireland through this morning and into western areas of Scotland by this afternoon, and we will see some rain on that this evening across this far south and west. But ahead of it, another dry and fine day. Plenty of sunshine around, high UV levels as well. It's going to feel warm in that June sunshine, highs of 24, 25 degrees across the southeast, but up to the low 20s up across northeastern areas of England, southeastern Scotland even as well. But into this evening, that wet weather will make its progress a little bit further east. It's not going to bring too much in the way of heavier rain, but it certainly will turn cloudier from the west. So parts of the Highlands, the Western Isles seeing some of that rain. Northern Ireland could see some heavier showers breaking out as well. But further east across northeastern England, actually will still be a fairly dry and bright evening. Temperatures still pretty high as well to end the day. Into Devon and Cornwall as well, we could see some of that wet weather, particularly on the coast and high ground is where we're most likely to see that rain. Now, this rain is going to move eastwards through the night to central areas of England, and it will likely lie across the southeast of England by the morning. It'll introduce quite a lot of cloud around, and there will just be some light drizzly rain on and off for many areas of the UK. Still fairly mild though, temperatures not dipping much below 10 degrees quite widely. Now, it does turn a bit clearer, but to the west of this weather front, so across Northern Ireland and Scotland, it will be a fine start to the weekend. And actually across parts of Wales, the southwest should brighten up quite quickly as well. Some cloud will likely linger for more eastern areas of England, southeastern Scotland as well. There could be a few showers around too, but it's still going to be feeling warm despite the less in the way of sunshine. Temperatures still climbing towards 23 degrees. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
OK.
Now, it's time for the Great British Giveaway now, and your chance to win over £15,000 in cash. 16,000 actually, if you include all the prizes as well.
Earlier, we caught up with the previous winner, John from North Yorkshire. He's a lucky old devil who got his hands on £20,000 from us this week. Here's what he had to say.
Hi, I'm John from sunny North Yorkshire, and I've just won £20,000 in the GB News Great British Giveaway. Well, there I was, sitting in the garden with a cup of coffee, and then I got this phone call out of the blue, and I thought, what's this about? And then it all became apparent. I have to say, I kept thinking several times a day, wow, I've got £20,000 coming. That's fantastic. And then, of course, when it arrived, I do have something to spend it on. I've never actually won anything like this before, but of course if you're not in you can't win, but it didn't cost much to enter, and here I am having won £20,000, and that's tax-free, so I'm rather pleased I did it.
Well, congratulations, John. We really hope you enjoy spending your winnings, and that could be you if you're the next big giveaway winner with 15 grand's worth of cash and then a whole host of goodies. Here's how you could win. Not you, you're not.
Don't miss out on your chance to win our Summer Spectacular. And have we got a prize for you? First, there's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yeah, best of luck to you on that one. I've decided, by the way, just to throw this out there because of your views this morning, I don't like high-definition television, because loads of you getting in touch saying, what's written on your hand? Whereas back in the good old days of television, when I started in 1942, you wouldn't have been able to even see my hand, never mind the fact I've got... Well, it's a street where I need to park tomorrow. That Matt in the gallery told me where I needed to park tomorrow, because I'm going to be somewhere else. And so it's because I haven't got my phone with me. I had to write it down on something.
You had to go old school and use your... I've never used the back of my hand. I always use my palm if I've got anything to write.
Do you?
A bit more hidden. Maybe you should take a leaf out of my book.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, doll.
Thank you.
Maybe I shall just work from home tomorrow, which maybe is what I shall do. But is it a good idea, working from home, or not? Is it a licence to be lazy? Would be for me. We'll debate that next.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
Walter's been in touch. Morning, Walter, who says, I won't read out his comment because he's not being nice about me. Actually, being nice about me is not necessarily a thing. Walter says, you could learn a lot by watching us public grilling politicians. Stop criticising our comments and using them against the political apparatchik. You won't read this, as we're not saying how brilliant you are. Look, Walter, here's the thing for you. In terms of what we do, we have to be, especially during an election, we have to be a little bit more careful because there are rules in place. But I tell you what, you are quite right that it is the public who should be asking the questions of politicians. Now, of course, most people can't do it day to day, which is why our People's Forum, the GB News People's Forum, was so important and why we would love to get all the party leaders on the GB News People's Forum. Because that is not about me turning up and asking them questions. It's about you turning up and asking them the questions that you want. And that's why it was so important in February. So you're quite right, Walter. And it is the politicians who should be listening to what the general public have to say. I hate the phrase general public. What you and us as voters want to say to them. Because that's what matters. That's who they've got to convince. That's who they're working for in all of this. So, actually, Walter, you are quite right.
And I will say as well, with the politicians last night, it is different for them when it's the public asking the questions and not journalists. You see them struggle with it more internally when they're criticised by someone with real-life experience of what they're talking about the cost of living crisis, talking about NHS waiting lists. They really struggle to be held to account by someone with real-life experience. I think they find it harder to answer the questions.
Of course they do, yeah.
So it's better in that way. Come under more scrutiny.
But we say, in terms of what we have to do as a job, there are rules and regs we have to follow, and there are some, and sometimes we can't throw in all the comments that you send up on our forum here because some of them aren't balanced enough for us to fall within the rules. And those rules are, I know they can be frustrating at times. They are important in terms of, especially during an election, but nevertheless, you know. The GB News People's Forums, and we'd love to do many, many more of them in the months and years to come, because then it's all about you facing these leaders face to face and asking your questions of which they have no idea what you're going to ask. We have no idea what you're going to ask. It's what matters to you. And that is really important. So, actually, good point, well made.
Now, it is a debate which has raged on in the office since the pandemic. Does working from home make employees happier and more productive?
Well, might make them happier. The first scientific experiment to measure the effects has found that employees enjoy jobs more when they're allowed to do them from home for part of the week. However, doesn't seem to make them any more efficient.
I wonder why. So today we are asking, working from home, should we allow it, or is it just a licence to be lazy?
All right, let's talk to former Apprentice star Ryan Mark Parsons and media commentator Fahima Mohammed. Good to see you both this morning. Ryan Mark, I mean, basically, people need an office environment, don't they?
Absolutely. And I think I talk especially on behalf of young people. And what comes to mind are recent graduates, perhaps from university, or they could be starting apprenticeships at very young, at the start of their careers. And I think it really impairs their professional growth if they're stuck behind a screen, two-dimensionally communicating with colleagues. They haven't got that chemistry that you get in real life that you guys have in the studio, where you could go and see your boss if you wanted to discuss a promotion or discuss how you can do better at your job. All of that is limited when you're working from home. And I'm not surprised that a major survey from studies from the US and UK found that thousands of young people, 18 to 24, 81% found themselves to be incredibly isolated because of working from home or any hybrid working structures. And that makes me sad. It makes me sad that young people like myself could be starting their careers and they can't do anything about the work systems and the timetables they have in place, where they have to work from home, and all of the professional growth that you would enjoy from being in the office, mingling with colleagues, even the social aspect, is completely ripped away from them. And I think that is a really utterly sad state of affairs.
Fahima, what do you make of it?
I think that's quite an exaggeration, and we are only looking at one demographic when we're coming to young people. You can shake your head and think what you want, but there are several studies to show that there are performance metrics to show that there is much more productivity. Even sort of legislation from YouGov actually, promoting to support employment and have the UK actually the best working practice and labour market there is, because the hybrid allows a work-life balance. And at the same time, so many industries and businesses do actually support the hybrid labour market, where they are actually coming into the office. Plus, it also does allow them to actually work more productively and efficiently when it's in their own time. They are less stressed with commuting. They are spending less, and it's actually even better for the environment, where everyone's not going in and coming out at the same time. And there is so much support for working at home. And it's not just to say that if you're at home, you are just confined to your space. Hybrid means that you have that flexibility and you can go in and come out, and you definitely have meetings online, even if you are at home, where you can actually ask those questions, and it's much more efficient for you. If you think that you have to always go out and be seen in order to be productive, that's just a cultural bias and a, conception that, it doesn't really match the reality, as studies also show that the productivity has actually risen from Harvard studies, from the Stanford studies, as well as the ProtoSearch, the Airtasker studies. There's so much that we can counter this with. And if you look at people overall, they're actually much more happier knowing that they actually have that flexibility to choose to work without the stress of commuting, especially when you are in London like myself.
Right, Mark, I can see you shaking your head.
Yeah, well, I just disagree with all of that, really. I have to refute the study she's citing. I mean, I found a study from the Workforce Institute that suggested that 57% of managers found that there was a productivity reduction because of working from home or hybrid working. And even Mental Health UK, and this isn't just a younger worker demographic, this is across the ages. Mental Health UK found that 42% of workers felt isolated, and that exacerbated burnout as a result. So we're seeing these studies emerge that completely conflict with what the other guest is saying. And it would also reinforce my point that working from home isn't productive, it isn't successful, and people need to get back to the office and work full-time in the office, because I think it's like you said at the top of the show, it is a license to be lazy. It really just catalyzes apathy. And young people, especially, that's the main worker demographic I'm concerned about, because I really think it stunts their growth in a job if they are told that they've got a hybrid working situation. Of course, when there's hybrid working, people don't want to go to the office because people are generally lazy. And that's the reality of life.
Yeah, all right. Look, we need to leave it there. Fahima, Ryan, Mark, thanks both very much indeed. Look, case-by-case basis, I'd be lazy. I just know I would.
See, I think I'd be very productive But it depends on people, doesn't it? I'm a good multitasker. I'm a woman, after all. Joe says civil servants working from home is the main reason the civil service is in the mire.
Well, you might have a point.
Yeah, loads of you getting in touch on that. Steve Smedley says, not everyone can work from home. When you go to the supermarket and the shelves are empty or there's nobody serving your coffee or burgers, you will think again. Equality in the workplace should apply to all.
Yeah, well, fair point. Keep your thoughts coming through. We've got the sport with Paul in just a moment.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the A1 in West Yorkshire, it's taking around 10 minutes in northbound queues heading into the roadworks at Went Bridge. On the M6 in the West Midlands, out of 4 lanes are closed southbound, where a lorry's broken down at junction 5 near Birmingham. It's just the outside lane that's open past there with queues from junction 7. On the M42 in Worcestershire, the outside lane's closed southbound after an accident at junction 2. Alvechurch causing delays. On the M25 in Kent, it's very slow clockwise towards junction 5, where the M26 joins the M25. There are queues too on the M26 approaching there because of roadworks. And train services are suspended between Bath Spa and Westbury, and also between Bath Spa and Swindon because of overrunning engineering work. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
All right, time for the sport, if you can bear it, with Paul Coyke. We shouldn't be too down. Look, we're top of the group in the Euros.
Great. Yes.
We got a draw.
Yeah, the weather's nice.
Doing all right.
Yeah.
Performance was just...
It was poor. That's what I was thinking. How do I talk about this now? Do we try and look positively, or do we just be honest about it and think...
I think we need to ask questions, Paul Coyte.
Go on then, ask away.
About what's going wrong.
Right.
Where's the oomph?
That's it, though. This is the thing. I'm
just very lacklustre.
I'm looking at it and thinking now, is it Gareth Southgate? Is it the way he's playing? Is it the players? Are they not doing what he wants? So we can't really get the right answer. Gareth Southgate saying, well, you know, when England dropped back, because the result, if you didn't hear, it was 1-1 against Denmark yesterday, which... You know, in the face of it, it's OK, it's not a bad result, but England played worse than they did against Serbia. It was very slow, it was very lacklustre. Once England scored, then it was the same old story that it seems like England sit back, but nobody seems to be mentioning the fact that it does tie in with the fact that we've gone ahead, and therefore the other side is obviously now thinking we need to get a goal.
Yeah,
so
but,
they're pushing forward, and that seems to be pushing England back.
Yeah, but where was the pressing? Where was the aggression?
That's what we want to see. And
that should be happening even if the other side are pushing back.
Great teams know where every player is. You see them work forward as a unit. They're a machine. Everybody knows where everybody is. It's fast. You see the press. That's what you want to see. But at the moment, it's slow. It's walking football. I'll pass it to the side. OK, you have it. It's almost like they're scared to do something with it because it's rather, I'd rather you had it and I'll give it to you. And then you can make the mistake. And there's just none of the positivity. We just don't seem to see it. So everything you've said, Stephen, is absolutely on the money.
I'll tell you what I was surprised at as well, and actually the same with the first match, is why is he not getting new legs on the pitch sooner?
Sorry,
right, you're really pushing it now, aren't you, mister? I can see what you're doing.
No, but I'm serious, though.
No,
I'm serious.
Well, the thing is, when do you roll the dice? You've got a really good team, and also he started with the same team as he started against Serbia. So thinking, OK, you know, you've got Trent in the middle, whereas he's usually playing right back, and is that going to work? Well, it doesn't seem to work. Yes, he did roll the dice, and then he took off the entire forward line and then changed that again. Did it make a difference? Slightly, not much. You didn't look at it and think, wow, that's really going to turn things around. You've got Carl Palmer there on the bench. That was a worry because he wasn't brought on. I think he will certainly play when they go against Slovenia on Tuesday. But anyway, it's not great. Mark Lawrenson's going to speak to us just after 8 o'clock and we'll see what he thinks.
Yeah, brilliant stuff.
If anybody knows, Mark Lawrenson knows.
Smash him. Paul, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
You can stop laughing at me now.
I'm very much enjoying your 2 pennies worth.
Yeah, I'm getting into it.
I think it's about 5 quid's worth.
Oh, there's at least 5 quid's worth. That's a good point. Yeah, he's quite the professional now.
Well, no.
You give Gareth Southgate a run for his money.
No.
You stick to the waistcoats.
We're out of time.
I'm sorry.
Papers next. Don't go anywhere.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
History lecturers at the University of Liverpool have been advised to problematise whiteness and heterosexuality in their seminars. They are saying that you should be guilty if you're white and heterosexual. Not using the long words they use, but that's kind of what they're saying.
Yeah, but do you know what? History in this country is concerned with more and has been lived by more white people and more heterosexuals, right? And that's the history. I'll tell you something else, Dawn. This is Russell Group University material here. This is Liverpool. It's a really good university. Mm-hmm. The thing that really got me going apart from this, and I thought it was an AI generation of words input into a system to come up with from something. It's ridiculous. The main issue I have is the verb problematise. I've never heard of that before. Yeah. So they should be prioritising grammar. Let's get first principles back in there firstly.
It's just promoting anti-racism.
It's not, Amy.
It is, wait. It's just bringing the marginalised voices into the discussion. So
no, what they're saying is look at British history through the optic of...
all perspectives. So let's look at it from the perspective of a queer person growing up. Let's look at it from the perspective of somebody from...
But that's not the majority.
When I actually looked at the evidence, it's all about unpacking bias. And you have to admit there has been a white bias in history.
No, there hasn't, because the facts...
From a white perspective...
Amy, the facts are, in history, most people in this country are white and heterosexual.
Of course, but then there's still...
So that's the history.
...voices that deserve to be brought into the discussion as much as the dominant...
Look,
like, that's all decolonising the curriculum is hearing all sides of the argument. Which surely we at GB News love. We celebrate that. That's what we do.
We do, but we're not telling anybody it's bad to be white or it's bad to be...
Exactly.
That is not what...
Amy, it is. It is.
The People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You are watching Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie. We're going through the papers with GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall. Morning to you both. Morning. Morning. And Nigel, we've got a story in the Times that caught my eye this morning, and it's marriages. The number of marriages has risen sharply.
Indeed, and that seems to be because of COVID, according to the Office of National Statistics. They're saying it's a short-term rise, but it has gone up hugely. But obviously, people couldn't get married during COVID. And it was relaxed at some point towards the end of COVID. I mean, Claire's dad got remarried during that time, and to go to the ceremony, we all had to wear masks, which was a bit weird. It seemed less weird at the time than it does now, looking back on it, really.
Yes.
Because we were quite used to it. But the other findings there, which are quite interesting, are that people now, 9 in 10 people live together before they get married, and it is the trial marriage thing. But what the ONS reckons is that weddings will now go back down to the normal levels after this. This is just the backlog from COVID when people had to cancel their weddings.
Yeah, well, fair enough, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting, the sort of rise in people living together first. I mean, I always thought that was what people did, but seemingly I was in a minority in that thought. And people are sort of trying it out and also putting off, due to the cost of living, having a very large wedding. So you can see that some people spend an absolute fortune on a day, and everybody's entitled to spend whatever they like to have the day that they wish. But it just seems at the moment people are now making slightly different choices, but they still want to get married. So all of the doom people who were saying that marriage isn't on the cards and people aren't getting married and staying together isn't quite true. They're just delaying it slightly to make sure that they know what they're entering into, and I think that's got to be a sensible idea.
You can always change your mind, of course. A bit like Chris Skidmore, Claire, in The Guardian. The Conservatives' former net zero czar has now said he's voting Labour.
I do wish that former ministers could stop. Just stop. I think that he made his point. He resigned his seat because of a certain issue over net zero. Now, I disagree with him around that issue, but he felt very strongly on it. That's great. Stand down, stand by your principles. That's fine. Please don't come back and wade and say you're going to vote for the other side when you have been a supporter, a minister of a government, of a certain party for quite some time.
Yeah, but the whole point is he thinks the policies of the other side are much more sensible, which
is then why didn't he join that party in the first place? If you
because your lot were actually committed to net zero until they weren't, and suddenly Rishi Sunak started watering down every principle, so we lost the idea of getting rid of petrol and diesel cars by 2030. That got postponed. Everything that came in put net zero beyond that 2050 deadline.
But I do think it's a case of, oh, well, if you don't like those principles, I have others, and I'll just go to the other side because it seems a bit better. I don't like that. You signed up and you campaigned as a Conservative for some considerable period of time. You were elected, you've served in a government, and then one issue, and you completely turned your vote around.
It was his issue. I mean,
that's it.
That was his big thing. The whole idea about combating climate change was Chris Skidmore's major... Well, he was the minister in charge of it, but it was his major campaign within Parliament.
You do wonder where he fits in with all the rest of the Labour policies. I mean, so the net zero one was his big issue, and that's fine. What about all the other policies? You're going to vote Labour just because of net zero. Well, what about all the other policies that you might not agree with because you were a Conservative? I just don't like it. I don't think it's helpful. I don't think it's sensible to do that.
Right, oh, well, there you go. Look, thank you both. You can agree to disagree.
Thank you very much, both of you. Let's have a look at the weather now with Annie.
warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's going to be another fairly dry and bright day for most of us, warmest in the south and east once again, but some rain is arriving later on today from the west. That's a weather front moving into parts of Northern Ireland through this morning and into western areas of Scotland by this afternoon, and we will see some rain on that this evening across this far south and west. But ahead of it, another dry and fine day, plenty of sunshine around, high UV levels as well. It's going to feel warm in that June sunshine, highs of 24, 25 degrees across the southeast, but up to the low 20s up across northeastern areas of England, southeastern Scotland even as well. But into this evening, that wet weather will make its progress a little bit further east. Not going to bring too much in the way of heavier rain, but it certainly will turn cloudier from the west. So parts of the Highlands, the Western Isles seeing some of that rain. Northern Ireland could see some heavier showers breaking out as well. But further east across northeastern England, actually will still be a fairly dry and bright evening. Temperatures still pretty high as well to end the day. Into Devon and Cornwall as well, we could see some of that wet weather, particularly on the coast and high ground is where we're most likely to see that rain. Now this rain is going to move eastwards through the night to central areas of England, and it will likely lie across the southeast of England by the morning. It'll introduce quite a lot of cloud around, and there will just be some light drizzly rain on and off for many areas of the UK. Still fairly mild though, temperatures not dipping much below 10 degrees quite widely. Now it does turn a bit clearer, but to the west of this weather front, so across Northern Ireland and Scotland, it will be a fine start to the weekend. And actually across parts of Wales, the southwest should brighten up quite quickly as well. Some cloud will likely linger for more eastern areas of England, southeast and Scotland as well. There could be a few showers around too, but it's still going to be feeling warm despite the less in the way of sunshine. Temperatures still climbing towards 23 degrees. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the A1 in West Yorkshire, there are northbound queues heading up towards Wentbridge because of road works. In Lincolnshire, the A17 is closed in both directions, west of the A15 at the Holdingham roundabout at Sleaford. And delays towards there, and as you divert. On the M6 in the West Midlands, 3 out of 4 lanes are closed southbound, where a lorry's broken down at junction 5 near Birmingham. It's just the outside lane that's open, with queues from junction 7 to the A34. On the M42 in Worcestershire, the outside lane's closed southbound at junction 2 at Alvechurch after an accident. Slope towards and past there. Slow too on the M25 in Kent clockwise towards junction 5 for the M26, with long delays on the M26 approaching the M25 there. And train services in West Sussex have been stopped southbound from Horsham to Barnham for track safety checks. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Don't miss out on your chance to win our Summer Spectacular. And have we got a prize for you? First, there's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock on Friday, the 21st of June. Today, the battle for number 10. Party leaders faced another grilling on last night's election programme, but who came out on top?
The hunt for Jay Slater, the missing teenager in Tenerife, has now entered its 5th day, as a friend claims the Spanish police are not doing enough.
Hollywood icon Donald Sutherland has died aged 88. We'll look back on his career.
Thousands of people have flocked to Stonehenge this morning to celebrate the summer solstice, marking the beginning of the astronomical summer.
Well, I'm not being funny, but it did seem like the longest day yesterday during that game. The good news, England currently top of Group C, so that's the good part of it. The bad news, England were not good against Denmark yesterday. We'll speak to Mark Lawrenson about that shortly. Kylian Mbappe returns for France against the Netherlands tonight with mask after he broke his nose against Austria. And in tennis, British #1 Jack Draper beat Carlos Alcaraz at Queen's, which is the first time a Brit's knocked out a top seed there in 52 years.
Good morning. It's another sunny day for many of us, but there is some rain due later. You can find out all the details with me a little later on.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News. Brendan has some strong thoughts on the match last night.
Oh.
He says England football team have no killer instinct. When you score 1, you must want to score 10. The overpaid drama queens seem to think that 1 is enough. My rating on the game last night is PPP. What's PPP?
I don't know. I don't know what that means. We get about, though, I tell you what, we've had messages as well from the Leonard family.
Oh, yeah.
Who are watching in Nairobi this morning.
Oh, are they really?
So there you go.
Good morning, Leonard family in Nairobi. Welcome.
Yes, welcome. Welcome along.
Welcome to the fun house.
Yes, but at least if you're in Kenya, of course, you don't have to deal with voting in the election over here, which is enough to make you tear your hair out at the minute. The Conservatives, Labour, Lib Dems and the SNP were grilled by you, the great British public, last night in a BBC election special.
Well, the Prime Minister said he was incredibly angry to learn about Tory figures allegedly betting on the election date.
Sir Ed Davey taken to task over his handling of the Post Office scandal.
And Sir Keir Starmer said Jeremy Corbyn would have made a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson.
Well, let's take a look back at the last 24 hours in politics.
Well, like you, I was incredibly angry to learn of these allegations. It's a really serious matter. It's right that they're being investigated properly by the relevant law enforcement authorities, including, as Fiona said, a criminal investigation by the police.
Migration is at record levels at the moment under this government. They've completely lost control. We need to get that number down. We need to get it significantly down. I'm not going to put an arbitrary figure on it, because every single politician who's put a number on it has never met that number.
When Alan Bates wrote to me, I'd been in office about 2 weeks, and I wrote to him and said, no, this is a matter for the Post Office, we don't govern it, and I'm not going to meet you. He wrote back furious, he did, and then I read his letter and said, well, I better meet him. And I met him in October, as you said, Fiona, and I took all his questions and I asked them to my officials and to the Post Office. And they gave me a categorical assurance that the points that Mr Bates was making were not true.
When Labour launched their manifesto last week, there were 6 key objectives. Not one of them mentioned legal immigration. Not one of them mentioned the population explosion in this country.
Well, let's talk to Shadow Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology, Peter Kyle, who joins us now. Good to see you this morning. What did you make of Sir Keir's performance last night? He can't get away from this Jeremy Corbyn question, can he?
Well, with the exception of that question, all the others were about the future. And I thought there was a theme that ran through the questions that came from the audience to Sir Keir, and that was all about how will you fix the problems that have been left after 14 years of chaos and instability of the Tory party? How will you fix the waiting list in the NHS? How will you get growth into the economy? How will you get our country firing on all cylinders again? Every question related to how will you fix the problems that have been caused by the Conservative Party. And of course, right to the very last minute, when the Conservative Party is mired in this betting scandal, Rishi Sunak refused to actually suspend or get these people out of the campaign. They're still representing the Conservative Party. The question is, why is he so weak? He can't even tackle the issues that are infecting his party right until the general election itself. For them, it's party first, self-enrichment first, country second. It's the opposite for Keir. Country first, party second.
Forgive me, but talk about dodging the question, Peter Kyle. I mean, the problem here is if he's someone who, 5 years ago says Jeremy Corbyn would make a great Prime Minister, and then he spent the last 5 years saying, actually, thank heavens we've got rid of him and I'm changing the party for the better, he just looks like an opportunist.
Well, politics is a team sport, and Keir did what he needed to be part of a team at that moment in time. And now he's recognised after the terrible defeat of 2019, there were lessons to be learned. And believe me, Keir has learnt them. He said at the beginning that he will listen and he will learn from what the public are telling him. And look at what he's done. He has fixed the Labour Party. It is fit for service once again. He has gone into this election with a changed Labour Party, facing the priorities of the country. And nobody doesn't recognise that the Labour Party is prioritising the issues facing the country and what the public are telling us they need us to start prioritising. We have those 5 missions to address the key challenges of the future, the 6 steps forward to take those crucial steps forward should we win the election in 2 weeks' time. And then, of course, a decade of national renewal. This shows that we're not only going to tackle the challenges and the problems that have been left by the Conservatives if we get the chance, but also seizing the opportunities of the future, which is why I'm in the industrial heartlands of South Yorkshire, to show how we can leverage public money to get more private investment in, so we can start realising the potential that our country has.
Can I ask you about Labour's plan for legal migration? Because Sir Keir Starmer has been pretty vague about it so far, hasn't he? He said he'd like to bring that number down, but he won't talk about what number he'd like to bring it down to. But net migration currently stands, latest figures we have, figures at 685,000. So what is the Labour Party's plan for legal migration?
So what we've said is that migration is too high, that we want it to reduce substantially. And what we've done is set out plans for both the irregular crossings of the migration that's coming across the English Channel, but also for legal migration. Now, there's only one way that you can tackle the challenges into the long term of legal migration here, and that is to fix the fundamental problems in our economy that's been caused by the Conservative Party and the way they've been running it, primarily to do with skills. Unless you have people going through the education system here, coming out into the economy with the skills our economy needs, then you are not going to be able to wean yourself off of legal migration. Secondly, it is about the health of the nation. We have 8.5 million people waiting for treatment on the NHS. We have 2.5 million people who are just out of the economy altogether because we don't know all of the reasons for it. Some of them didn't return after COVID, and that's because we have a broken NHS service. So to fix the NHS, to get the waiting lists down, makes people more economically active and able to fulfill their potential and the needs of our overall economy, and to get the people coming into the economy with the right skills. We have plans for all of these issues, tackling the waiting lists and a skills programme for schools. So we will tackle the long-term challenges and get cracking on the short-term one from day one.
Yeah, but what that doesn't answer, though, is part of the problem we have, which is so many people that the Home Office can't process at the moment as well. I mean, I know that's linked to the illegal side of things. However, what are you going to do about that? Because you'd be accused of saying, well, you're just going to have an amnesty for all these people who are currently in the system.
Well, the amnesty has been given by the Conservative Party because they have a bill to send people to Rwanda, which only covers 1% of irregular or what you're calling illegal migration into the UK. We're going to use that money to recruit more border force workers and caseworkers in the Home Office.
But what do you do about those people who are already here and waiting to be processed?
we will process them. As I said, we'll use that money. We will, as quickly as we possibly can, considering the huge, gargantuan problem being left by us, because at the moment, the waiting list is getting larger and larger. The productivity of each individual caseworker has fallen by 50% since the Conservatives took over. That means each individual caseworker is halving the number of people they're getting through. We will tackle these issues by hiring more caseworkers using the Rwanda money, and we will make sure that the system is working functionally. People aren't stressed and overworked in what they're doing, so therefore doing less work. And we're going to set up the National Border Force, of course, so that we can actually start tackling the criminal gangs using terror powers which recognises the seriousness of the challenge, so that we can again tackle the challenge at its root cause.
OK, Peter Carr, we've got to leave it there, but it's good to talk to you. Thank you.
Now, let's head now to the search for missing teenager Jay Slater, which has now entered its 5th day in Tenerife after he was last heard from on Monday morning.
A friend of his has hit out at Spanish police, claiming they're not doing enough. The 19-year-old called a friend to say he was lost, had no water, and his phone was down to 1% battery.
Well, joining us now is the editor of Canarian Weekly, Chris Elkington, and our reporter, Sophie Reaper. Very good morning to you both. And Chris, let's start with you. What is going on with the search on Tenerife?
Well, the search obviously stopped last night after the 4th day, and unfortunately nothing positive came out of it. The helicopters have already flown over this morning and they're resuming in the same area. The Tenerife Park is a huge area and it will take time to cover it, so the search is ongoing. The police have called it a full mobilisation of all resources available to cover the area and make a thorough search, including dogs on the ground, mountain rescue teams, and of course drones and helicopters from the air.
What's the weather like at the minute, Chris? Because obviously that's a key factor in this.
Yeah, in that area, it's a bit cooler than it is here in the south. We're, in the daytime, we're currently around about sort of mid to high 20s. In the Tenerife Park, I was up there yesterday, and it drops to sort of 16, 17 degrees. And at night time, obviously, it can get, very, very chilly, particularly if you're out there in shorts and a T-shirt. So it's not ideal conditions at all. It can be harsh in the daytime and very, very cold at night.
And Chris, tell us about the region where Jay went missing, because it's believed that the last known location was a mountainous part of the island.
Yeah, it's an area called the Masca Valley, which is on the west coast of Tenerife. And it's very popular with hikers. There's a lot of trails around that area. And that's then just north of that is the Tenerife Park, which is the area he was heading to. And that is a vast, barren, open space. It's very mountainous. It's on the base of a volcano. So as you can imagine, the terrain is extremely difficult. However, a lot of people pass through that area every day. The Masca Valley is one of the most visited locations in the whole of the island to do these trails. And the Tenerife Park has roads that link the south and the north of the island going through it. And again, there are a lot of hikers' trails, but it is a very difficult terrain. Hence, the fire brigade have been brought in with abseiling equipment to look in the ravines and valleys, where lots of them are very, very deep. And if someone has tripped and fallen over and landed in one of those, it'd be very difficult to find them.
OK, Chris, thank you. Let's head to Jay Slater's hometown then of Oswestwhistle. Sophie Reaper's there for us. I mean, you cannot imagine, Sophie, what his family, never mind the friends and the community, are going through.
Absolutely, Stephen. I think the sun may be shining here in Oswestwhistle this morning, but the mood is incredibly, incredibly sombre. And at the heart of it all, the Methodist Church, where last night family members, friends, members of the local community gathered here for a service where they hung blue ribbons. There are dozens and dozens of these blue ribbons along this main road, which runs through Jay Slater's hometown. They hung those ribbons as a symbol of hope. They all also shared messages with one another, all with the common theme of getting Jay home. They do still have hope here that the 19-year-old will be found. Of course, we've entered day 5 now of the search for him after he went missing in Tenerife. There's a Facebook group which I've been looking through this morning. It has almost 450,000 members of people who are invested in this case, people posting. Of course, we do have people posting speculation, which isn't necessarily helpful, but it does have family members, people close to the family, posting updates for people of this town who are incredibly invested, who've known Jay perhaps for his whole life, who just want to see that teenager brought home.
Sophie, for now, thanks very much indeed.
I can't even imagine the distress of Jay's family, can you?
No.
His friends just away on a holiday. His mother was saying it's the first holiday that he'd saved up for months and gone on with his friends. First foreign holiday. So sad.
Unbelievable. Let's keep our fingers crossed.
That he's found
as yet.
safe. Yeah.
Right, let's see what the weather's going to do over here. Here's Annie.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's going to be another fairly dry and bright day for most of us, warmest in the south and east once again, but some rain is arriving later on today from the west. That's a weather front moving into parts of Northern Ireland through this morning and into western areas of Scotland by this afternoon. And we will see some rain on that this evening across this far south and west. But ahead of it, another dry and fine day. Plenty of sunshine around, high UV levels as well. It's going to feel warm in that June sunshine, highs of 24, 25 degrees across the southeast, but up to the low 20s up across northeastern areas of England, southeastern Scotland even as well. But into this evening, that wet weather will make its progress a little bit further east. Not going to bring too much in the way of heavier rain, but it certainly will turn cloudier from the west. So parts of the Highlands, the Western Isles seeing some of that rain. Northern Ireland could see some heavier showers breaking out as well. But further east across northeastern England, actually will still be a fairly dry and bright evening. Temperatures still pretty high as well to end the day. Into Devon and Cornwall as well, we could see some of that wet weather, particularly on the coast and high ground is where we're most likely to see that rain. Now this rain is going to move eastwards through the night to central areas of England, and it will likely lie across the southeast of England by the morning. It'll introduce quite a lot of cloud around, and there will just be some light drizzly rain on and off for many areas of the UK. Still fairly mild though, temperatures not dipping much below 10 degrees quite widely. Now it does turn a bit clearer, but to the west of this weather front, so across Northern Ireland and Scotland, it will be a fine start to the weekend. And actually across parts of Wales, the southwest should brighten up quite quickly as well. Some cloud will likely linger for more eastern areas of England, southeastern Scotland as well. There could be a few showers around too, but it's still going to be feeling warm despite the less in the way of sunshine. Temperatures still climbing towards 23 degrees. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, time for our giveaway now. It's your chance to win more than £16,000 worth of prizes.
Yep, that's £15,000 worth in cash and a whole host of summer treats.
How much?
15,000.
12.
£15,000 worth of cash, yes. And a whole host of summer treats too, but you need to be in it to win it. Here's all the details you need.
Don't miss out on your chance to win our Summer Spectacular. And have we got a prize for you? First, there's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. good luck.
Yes, good luck. Now, still to come, do stay with us. Ernest Shackleton's last ship, Quest, has been found on the seafloor off the coast of Canada, more than 60 years after it sank.
So we'll tell you more in a moment.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Recent polling suggests dentistry has become the hardest NHS service for patients to access, within NHS treatments still 15% lower than pre-pandemic levels. So a YouGov survey reveals that more than 70% of Brits describe seeing the dentist as difficult, compared with 64% for GPs and 42% for A&E services. One British man, get this, he even took to flying 10,000 miles for dental care, saying the extra time and money spent was far less hassle than trying to get an appointment on the NHS. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs. And a shocking 1/5 of UK adults have also admitted to trying DIY dentistry, including the old trick of tying string around a wobbly tooth and slamming it in the door so it comes out. So, should people be more careful when taking their teeth into their own hands?
That is one of the problems. Obviously, population growth makes it much more difficult for people to access NHS services, but they need to then catch up on the other side with dental services and increase the amount of dentists and access to dentistry, and especially NHS dentistry, obviously.
What's the cut-off age for free dentistry on the NHS?
So it is 18 years old, but there are exemptions around maternity, pregnancy. There's some free care around pregnancy.
We saw some data a few weeks back about the number one cause for child admission into A&E is tooth decay. I mean, that was shocking when I read it.
It's really bad, and what happens is people, kids with multiple decayed teeth, they basically have to be put under general anaesthetic, and then all those rotted teeth have to be extracted under general anaesthetic. Like, if those baby teeth start going crooked, then the adult teeth start going crooked as well. Right. So it is important to look after the baby teeth. It's really important. I think they should make it more central to their policies, definitely.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that. Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Breakfast. The time is 8:22 and this is really exciting. Ernest Shackleton's last ship, Quest, has been found on the seafloor off the coast of Canada more than 60 years after it sank.
Yeah, of course, Shackleton led 3 British expeditions to the Antarctic. He died aboard Quest in 1922 en route to Antarctica.
Well, the ship continued to be used until around 1962, until it was crushed by sea ice and sank on a seal hunting expedition.
Well, the leader of the Shackleton Quest expedition, John Geiger, joins us now. Really good to see you this morning.
Good to see you, thank you.
I mean, this really must have been quite a challenge to locate something that had been down there for such a long time.
Absolutely, and you know, the Labrador Sea is a vast area. It's the North Atlantic. Conditions were difficult. We had very dense fog, but you know, we had some decent equipment. We had a sonar towfish, so it was just a question of identifying the right area, really, to search. And we spent months researching that. You know, the various currents and what the ice conditions would have been like in 1962 when the ship went down.
So you had those coordinates, didn't you, that were given by the captain when the ship went down, but then you had to establish where the ship could have moved to with the currents. That's a really difficult thing to try and establish.
Absolutely. A lot of work went into establishing a search box, an area that we had a high probability, medium and low probability area, and we had a very limited window. We only had a couple of days to search. So, you know, we had, in fact, completed the high probability area, and I was starting to get a little bit nervous, but sure enough, for the very next line that we
How far had she gone?
Not terribly far, and you know, I would say a couple of kilometers from where.
All right.
Yeah. So it was within the area that we thought we would likely find the ship.
And take us to that moment when you picked it up on sonar and you thought, oh my goodness,
it's euphoric because you know you're looking. The seafloor there is very flat, plain. There were not a lot of features. Occasionally there'd be like a rock or something. we call it a lobster, you know, and then suddenly to see a ship emerge as you're you know mowing the lawn, as you're going back and forth over the seabed, suddenly you see a ship there, and you can't mistake it.
Why your fascination with Shackleton? I mean, I know that a remarkable man who, and actually quite a character in history, who perhaps isn't talked about as much as he should be now.
He should be. He was a self-made explorer. He was a remarkable guy, and he, you know, my fascination, I mean, relates to his leadership. He was undoubtedly the greatest leader in terms of all the polar explorers. He always managed to put the safety of his men ahead of his expeditions and their success. So, the fact that no one died under his direct command on any of his expeditions is a exceptional achievement. And how he was able to motivate them, the endurance saga, the escape from Antarctica, is just a remarkable lesson in leadership.
I mean, it was quite something, wasn't there? I mean, he left a load of men on an island, I can't think the name of the island now, but he left a load of... Elephant Island, left a load of men there, and they had no doubt he would return, which, of course, he did.
He did. I mean, it's a miraculous survival story, really is. And the fact that on this final expedition on Quest, you know, he was returning to Antarctica. He'd originally planned a Canadian Arctic expedition. That was thwarted by the then Prime Minister of Canada, so he turned south. And a lot of stress. I mean, he died at age 47. He died aboard this ship, Quest. So and that death marked the end of the so-called heroic age of polar exploration. So it really is a significant ship for that reason alone.
And what does this mean for you? I mean, you were out there with sonar, weren't you? You had about 3 days to find the ship, but this has actually been going on for you, this search, for years.
Yeah, no, it's something, you know, we as a team, a lot of British members of our team as well, and Norwegians, it was a sort of an international team. You know, we've been really fixated on this. I was very concerned that it was in Canada. The Royal Canadian Geographical Society, of which I'm chief executive, should be the organization that finds it. I'd heard at one point that some cigar-chomping Americans were after it, so that was the final impetus to yeah.
So about 6 years, isn't it?
Yeah, it was about 6 years in all that we were working at it.
Wow, it's quite something. John, really good to talk to you this morning.
It's great to
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Fascinating, isn't it?
Well, from a fantastic story to one that wasn't quite so fantastic last night, Paul Coit will have all the football news.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M55 in Lancashire, there are eastbound queues after traffic was stopped at junction 1 at Fulwood. On the A1 in West Yorkshire, there are northbound queues taking roughly a quarter of an hour towards the roadworks at Wentbridge. Now in Lincolnshire, the A17 is closed each way west of the A15, holding a roundabout at Sleaford for an investigation with delays as you divert. On the M6 in the West Midlands, 3 out of 4 lanes are closed southbound, where a lorry's broken down at junction 5 near Birmingham. There are queues from junction 7 for the A34. On the M42 in Worcestershire, the outside lanes closed southbound at junction 2 at Alvechurch after an accident causing queues. In Hertfordshire, the A10 is partly blocked northbound just after the Hoddesdon roundabout. It's very slow towards and past there, and trains in West Sussex heading south from Three Bridges to Barnham are being diverted via Haywards Heath because of track safety checks. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Putting on a big smile as we talk about the Euros, Paul.
The morning after the night before, or the late afternoon before.
It just felt so flat at the end of the match last night.
Everybody did. Everybody did. It started off OK, but then it goes sideways and backwards, and then there's just... It looked like Denmark with a better team, so it was 1-1, but Denmark drew with England. England have won 4 points, so there's not going to be a problem qualifying for in the group, but when it comes to actually winning the Euros, then that looks like a different proposition altogether. Great football teams, well, are greater than the sum of their parts, quite frankly, and I think England were the opposite of that yesterday.
Yeah.
Great footballers, but they didn't work together as a team, and whose fault it is, whether it's Gareth Southgate's, whether it's the teams, whatever it is, I can't work it out, so I thought it might be good to speak to someone that probably will be able to tell me. One of our favourite ex-Liverpool players and excellent broadcaster, the great Mark Lawrence, is with us. Morning, Mark.
Morning, Paul.
This is not going to be easy for you, so what exactly went wrong yesterday? What is it, the players? Is it Gareth? Is it everything? Why on earth is it so poor?
I think it's a mixture of everything, but you must also remember as well that England are a massive scalp. They really seriously are, and you know, I think it makes it difficult for them. These teams just play so well against them. They worked so hard. You just said it. I mean, they've got 4 points from 2 games, which is fine. Is it Slovenia next, which I do think they will win. But also, I think the problem is they're experimenting a little bit at the moment, and Trent Alexander-Arnold, unfortunately, just hasn't played with the same form he plays for Liverpool.
So you're a big fan of his, aren't you? I know you're a big fan.
Yeah, he's great, but it's just not happening for him. Can't get Foden into the game. What's all that about? Fella's a genius. You know, and then you've got Harry Kane plays up front on his own, and it's one of those things where England score, and then it's kind of they sit off instead of going and getting the second goal, and then you probably end up winning 2, 3, 4, and 5. But it's a little bit obviously with the manager, but he can't do a lot of things for doing them right, can he? Or right for doing them wrong, I should say. So
yeah. I mean, I would never disagree with you, Mark, but I'm thinking that. Say about a scalp, but then what about teams like France and Spain? Every big team is going to be a scalp, surely, to a smaller team. And you should be better than that other team anyway, shouldn't we?
Well, no.
And also, isn't it them going forward after we score that is actually making England sit back a little bit more instead of sitting back on the goal? What do you make on that?
Yeah, no, I'll give you that, but I'll bet you now, OK? I'll bet you now that England, when they get through this group and whoever they play, I bet they play really, really well.
Right.
It's just this thing where... and it's very difficult to put your finger on it, but they kind of, we're playing Slovenia, we're playing Serbia, we're playing Denmark, and, you know, if one or two are thinking, this will be easy... It doesn't work. And the other thing as well is nowadays these teams have got better players, but also they are extremely well managed. And if you watch how everybody plays against England, the lesser teams, shall I say, they're organised. They don't take chances. They man-mark players. They sit on people. They make it very, very difficult. I mean, I'd love to be in, you know, as an ex-Ireland player, I'd love to be in England's position.
Yeah,
today.
sure. I mean, it's like you say, it's a team game, isn't it? And if the team works together, then they're going to be successful. So, but are England too many individuals more than a team, though? Do you think?
Well, yeah, a bit at the moment, but I think it will improve.
Right.
You know, you said about some of the part. Once you know these players come out and play against the big teams, you watch, it'll be completely different performance. It's a mental thing as much as anything.
No, I think you could be right. So we don't need to worry too much yet. Get Slovenia out of the way, no matter what happens there. And then once the knockout stage comes, then we don't need to... Because everybody keeps going, oh, yeah, how are we going to do it if we'd like this against these smaller teams? How are we going to be against the bigger ones? But then it's going to be a different kettle of fish altogether then.
It is a different kettle of fish, and they'll be worried about playing England. Nobody wants to play England. All these top teams you're talking about, including the Germans, they don't want to play England because they know it's a 50-50 game.
Yeah.
And that's why I think England, obviously, I think they'll kick on. I really do. But if you're the manager, it's a nightmare, isn't it? Because everybody's picking his team. He shouldn't have him in, and what's he doing, and all those kind of things. And to be fair to him, he's gambled a little bit with the Trent Alexander-Arnold thing, and it's just not worked. So I don't think they'll be doing that in the next game. OK, well, we probably will see him, what do you think, going back to where he should be now? And then... Yeah, you know what they should do? They should bring Shackleton on. He was obviously a genius, wasn't he? I loved all that. That was brilliant, wasn't it? So get Shackleton on. And there was a Len Shackleton who played for England, was there not?
Yes, it was. Are we not Ernest Shackleton?
That was Ernest Shackleton.
Yeah, the Ernest Shackleton. OK.
Yeah, but he was a good leader of men.
He was a good leader of men.
He's still a Shackleton, Paul, whatever he is.
Yeah, we'll let the Shackletons off. That's what we need to do and go forward. So, Mark, it's always a pleasure, sir. Thank you very much for your time. It's great to speak to you. You know what? And you make me feel better about the whole thing now. So I'll go into the weekend feeling a lot happier.
Send me the cheque then if I make you feel better.
OK, put it on with the next one. Thank you very much, Mark. So there you go. He knows, and I think Mark is right.
Well, look, if
we do better against better teams.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Once you get out the group stages, if then we're going to pick up our game, it shouldn't have to be like that, though. Yeah, I know, but it's never easy. It's never an easy watch. Watching England. Shall I do a little Spain-Italy? Because Spain, we talk about how good Spain are. They were excellent against Italy yesterday. So these are the nations that we're likely to come up against. Look, have a look at these two sets of fans here, which I hope we've got. We've got the Spanish fans and the Italian fans that were together in the game. Look at that. Now, that is what you call a hat. We should be doing fashion here. Look at that. That's fantastic.
What do you think of that? Very nice.
I'm impressed.
I'm not really sure what they are on their head.
Don't know, don't care.
Well, who cares? He looks great. Well, talking about fashion, we've got Luciano Spalletti, who is the manager of Italy, and they don't wear tracksuits anymore.
Oh, don't they?
And they don't wear suits. It's kind of like a hybrid between a suit and a tracksuit. So have a look at this.
Loungewear.
It's kind of like, look, that looks like a regular suit, right?
Yeah.
You've got the Italian badge. There's Spalletti there. OK, let's see the next one. So there we are, just so we can see. It looks very nice, I think.
Yeah, looks all right.
But on the back, if we have a look at the next one, it's got Italia written on the back.
No, I don't like that.
You're not sure about that?
No.
It looks scruffy.
Well, here's him with the backroom staff as well. Look, there they are.
No.
See, I'm not sure. I'm torn. I like a bit of sartorial elegance on the touchline, but it's like it's trying to be a tracksuit, trying to be a suit. Not really sure what it is, but does look better than I think Gareth did with his little.
It looks like they've all got their wives to iron those letters on the back.
Do you think so? Yeah. I think when you look at it, it's almost like they're all stitched in. But very nice. But today, Slovakia versus Ukraine, Poland versus Austria, huge game. Netherlands versus France, which is tonight, which is going to be great. Kylian Mbappe, although broke his nose, he's got his mask on, so he'll be wearing that tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul Coit.
I'll see you in your mask next week.
You will. Don't worry about England. Everything's going to be fine, Mark says so.
Thank you.
It's only up.
Paul, thanks very much indeed. All right, we've got the papers heading away in just a minute with Nigel Nelson and Claire Pearsall.
This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have said stump.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The new BBC Director of Sport, who's a man called Alex K. Jelski, who's downplayed fears raised by sports women about biological men competing in female categories. And he's also called Martina Navratilova, I've got to say, has to be probably the most successful woman tennis player in history, and a very brave woman too. She escaped the Iron Curtain and she came out. And Sharon Davis, he says, are not experts on the issue.
At the same time, transgender US swimmer Leah Thomas has lost her legal battle and been told that she cannot compete at the Olympics.
So Leah Thomas made an appeal to World Aquatics, who have this rule in place that says that they protect the female category, as does athletics and world cycling. And because Leah doesn't actually qualify, because Leah isn't training, so she's not even someone that would be potentially part of the Olympic team. They've just said that, you don't qualify to be able to bring this case. It's been thrown out on a technicality, thank goodness, and which means that, swimming will not have any males beating elite females in Paris this summer, which was particularly good for me, bearing in mind that I now have to be very careful about what I'm allowed to say and not say. We're not allowed to use the words biological male, transitioned male. I mean, just every single possible way that we could explain that the person in the race wasn't a female, and it only affects women. It doesn't affect men. Females that identify as male are no risk to men's sport in any shape or form. It's just women that are losing their opportunities. The thing I take the most offence to, and this is very serious, and this needs to be dealt with by the BBC, and this is why I wrote to Tim Davie. In that article, he compared males that are identifying as women in women's sport to Jamaican and Ethiopian females being allowed to compete.
What?
The People's Channel.
Welcome back to Breakfast. It's 8:41. We are going through the papers this morning with Nigel Nelson and Claire Pearsall. Very good morning to you both. Nigel, let's start with you, shall we? And this is a story about an ex-soldier jailed for kissing a man has got his cap badge back.
Yeah,
40 years later.
It's a moving story, this, and one of the biggest scandals in the armed forces. It's Stephen Close. He's 61 now. He was an ex-Fusilier, and when he was stationed in Germany back in the 1980s, he was caught kissing a fellow serviceman. As a result of that, he was jailed for 6 months and then thrown out of the armed forces. There are around about 20,000 people this has been affected by, and not all of them were jailed. The jailing stopped in the 1990s, but they were pretty disgusting. That the sergeant major would put them through disgusting shaming ceremonies where they'd have all the insignia on their uniform stripped off. And the whole thing with these people is, apart from the injustice at the time, that they've suffered, they lost income, they've lost their pensions, and the big breakthrough was at the European Court of Human Rights in 2000, and that's where we lifted the gay ban on the armed forces. Now, Stephen Close has now been able to get back his beret and the cap badge. He was forbidden to wear those things in the interim, and of course they can get their medals back. The problem at the moment now, there's been an inquiry, the government have apologised for the treatment. What has got to happen now is they must get some compensation. And of course, the government is a bit reluctant to give them money. They're quite happy to apologise for the treatment they receive, but not to actually hand over any money.
Claire?
Yeah, I mean, as Nigel said, he's worked very hard on this campaign, and it's 40 years ago. It's not that long ago. It's unbelievable that there was ever that prejudice against gay people in the armed forces, and still to this day we're only just receiving apologies, getting people's medals and cap badges back. What an appalling stain on all of our lives that was. I can't believe it ever happened, but it's fantastic. The compensation issue does need to be worked out, but you can understand that at the moment it's not going to be looked at, but they should be top of the list, I think, when it comes back into a new parliament.
Well, let's hope so, actually, because there's still people who were prepared to put their lives on the line for the rest of us.
Yeah, and that's
no matter who they want to kiss.
Precisely, and it doesn't matter. They were good at their jobs, they were willing and ready to serve, and they were treated so appallingly. And I think that one of the worst bits is they were paraded round in front of their colleagues.
I've just read that, that they were swabbed for DNA samples.
Yeah. The treatment of them...
then paraded around.
I mean, Nigel knows more. He's actually spoken to
the Army
people.
Investigation Branch used to go in, a Special Investigation Branch used to go in, rip the whole of their living accommodation apart, looking for diaries, and it was absolutely horrible. And the worst thing about it was that LGBT sex was legalised in 1967, and yet it still remained illegal in the armed forces till 2000. So anyone in civilian life wouldn't have had any penalty, but anyone serving in the forces did. Now the culture has changed completely, and there are pride units that actually march on Remembrance Sunday, but it's a comparatively new thing.
Yeah. Right, let's turn our attention to football, should we? In the Times, Claire, this is not a bad... I say, I think this is really good, actually. Yeah. We all hear about the fan zones.
Yeah.
But Asda has set up some nan zones.
It certainly has. Now, this is put together by Asda as part of an initiative to combat loneliness in communities. And it follows research that found that nearly 2 million over 65s will be watching the football alone. So Asda have come together in Watford and also Manchester and Liverpool to create what they lovingly refer to as a nan zone, so that people who are on their own can get together, they can watch the football, have a few light refreshments and just enjoy the company. And I just think it's wonderful. Sport is one of those things that does unite people. And I would feel horrendously sad if there were people sitting there on their own, watching it, no one to discuss it with. We all like a good old conflab. We're all a bit sort of armchair referee, armchair football coaches. And if they don't have anyone to share that with, I think that's really sad. And if these communities can come together, and good on Asda for doing it, for opening up a space available to them. Apparently they're putting on things like sausage rolls.
Also, they're providing the snacks as well.
It looks like they are.
Oh, well, good on them.
If they're not Asda, you should be. So I think this is a great initiative, and it shouldn't just be for football. I think that we need to look at combating loneliness in parts of our communities. Things like this, things like supermarkets are at the centre of everybody's lives. People always go to a supermarket of any colour. So I think that they could be a real use, and we can stop losing people to loneliness.
Yeah. Well, we need to do more, don't we, to combat loneliness?
We do.
Yeah, we do.
We've lost that sense of community, haven't we?
That's right. I think that, yes, that people, especially in towns and cities, don't even know their next-door neighbour anymore.
No.
The idea where once there were lots of communities around, people haven't done that. And something like this, you know, these people they can exchange phone numbers, that they can make new friends there. And the great thing is there'll be no drunkenness and no hooliganism.
Well, there might be a bit of drunkenness. You never know.
Well, apparently they occasionally spill a few sausage rolls, but that's it.
But I tell you what, in terms of there's corporate and social responsibility, CSR, that big companies are meant to sort of engage in, right? And it costs them money to look good in the community.
Yeah.
But actually, it's an advertising campaign, isn't it? You know, a supermarket opens up these sort of things and chucks on a bit of food and a couple of cans of beer and all the rest of it. You get customers for life out of that. Well, why not do it?
Exactly. I mean, it just seems to be... It is also clever marketing, apart from anything else. But it's doing some good at the same time. And if you can put the two together, even better.
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant, good on them. Let's get all the other supermarkets need to jump on board that as well.
I think they do. And you can just imagine these sort of group of individuals getting together, and you don't know if friendships are going to blossom from that. But also the staff in the stores will probably have seen these people, then they get to know them. And you always think that you would love somebody to look out in a community if they hadn't seen Mrs. Miggins for a couple of weeks, they might be a little concerned.
Yeah.
And they could raise an alarm. And I think that we all forget that there are people there on their own. Everybody's lives are busy. Everybody is doing everything. And sometimes you forget just a simple hello, how are you, goes a long way for some people.
Of course it does. Yeah. Of course it does.
Nigel, let's take a look at this story, shall we? This is about cyber criminals who have now published blood test data.
Yeah, this is scary.
Yeah.
They appear to come from Russia. It's a group called Quillin, and they are basically cyber terrorists. So what they've been doing is that they've been holding hospitals ransom. They managed to get hold of 400 gigabytes of data, and this is actually blood tests. We don't know if they've actually got the results, but they've got the name of the patient, they've got the NHS number, and they're now publishing this because the hospitals didn't pay up. And the kind of money they're demanding, there was another health provider who was also blackmailed in this way and paid up 17.5 million. So this is actually huge money, but it would be incredibly embarrassing for people to have certain diseases released to the public, which is why a lot of people actually would rather they paid the money than not.
It's an absolute scandal. We have got to leave it there. Nigel, Claire, thank you both very much indeed. Really good to see you this morning. Because we're leaving it, cutting it slightly short, because we want to talk to the Secretary of State for Wales, David T.C. Davies, who joins us now. Good to see you this morning. Look, we've got to talk about this latest scandal engulfing the Conservative Party around election betting. I mean, talk about kicking you when you're down, but what can be done about this?
Well, obviously, anyone who's found to have done this is going to be, and rightly, thoroughly investigated. And if they broke the rules, as Rishi Sunak said yesterday, they're going to be thrown out of the Conservative Party, and they're going to face the full force of the law for it.
Rishi Sunak said last night he's incredibly angry over these allegations, but so angry that he hasn't actually suspended anybody over it. Less than 2 weeks to go to the polls. Why hasn't he done that?
Well, he's made it very clear that an investigation has to take place. We need to find out what rules, if any, have been broken. And I just don't want to prejudge that. The two important things are an investigation is being carried out, and anyone found to have broken the rules is going to be thrown out of the Conservative Party, but will also face the full force of the law.
What does it say about the party, though, now that, I mean, so close to an election, there just seems to have been, I mean, frankly, disaster after disaster in terms of your election campaign?
I honestly think we've got to get a bit of context here. I've already spoken about this totally, potentially unacceptable behaviour, which is being investigated. But people have pointed to things that I think really, when you stand back and look at it, it's a bit trivial. Rishi making a speech when it rained. It rains in this country. We can't control the weather. Look what we have done: inflation down to 2%, unemployment at 3%, joint fastest growth in the G7. When it comes to voting, OK, what is going to be more important for people? Is it the image of the Prime Minister getting a bit wet in the rain? Or is it the fact that the economy has now turned a corner, despite us having to go through the problem of a global pandemic and a major land war in Europe and the impact that has had on all of us as an economy? What is really the important thing here?
But it's what it looks like. We're looking at the betting scandal. Ruth Davison saying that this makes the Tory party look sleazy and grubby. She says it's akin to insider trading. We've had viewers speaking to us on gbnews.com/yoursay this morning, saying that this is just a reminder of what the Tories stand for, lining the pockets of themselves and their friends. It reminds them of the PPE scandal.
Listen, I mean, the PPE scandal we could be a long time on, because I was a minister there and I saw that is not what I saw. I saw us doing absolutely everything possible. When the press were quite rightly saying, get PPE in now, we're about to run out of it, we did everything we could to get PPE in and we didn't run out of it. As far as this is concerned, look, there are problems in all parties with standards of behaviour. I set my own standards. I have said that the first thing I did when I took over the Wales office as a cabinet minister, I scrapped the ministerial car. There is no ministerial car for the Wales office. I travel around by tube. or on a Boris bike, the second thing I did was to clear out all of the alcohol from the building, so there would be no alcohol drunk at any official function, whether in or out of the building that I attended or any senior officials attended, and I led by example, clearly. So I set my standards as for others to do their own. I'm afraid when I hear Keir Starmer opining about this, I'm thinking, what are you on about? In Wales, we've got a First Minister who was happy to take £200,000 as a donation from somebody who'd been convicted twice of dumping toxic waste in the Gwent levels. He then faced a motion of no confidence over it, which he lost because two of his own side weren't willing to turn up and support him. And he's still sitting there as First Minister of Wales. And Keir Starmer is not saying a dicky bird about it. So I really think we all need to fess up to the fact that we all have problems. And the first way to tackle a problem is to acknowledge it. So I acknowledge this gambling thing is totally out of order. They need to be investigated. And if people have broken the rules, they need to be thrown out. Let's hear Keir Starmer talking about the behaviour of some of his own party members and senior politicians.
You mentioned, what you would, like to be focusing on in all of this, and things like inflation coming down and what have you. The problem is the perception of this is, well, it's the government finally coming up with solutions to problems that they've presided over. So it's like fixing your own mess.
Well, no, that's not right, because if you look at inflation, for example, it started rising at the start of 2022. It was predicted to go up because we spent £400 billion. We pumped that money into the economy, rightly so, to try and support businesses and individuals through COVID. And then latterly, when Russia invaded Ukraine, energy prices went through the roof. We needed to support people again. By the way, we're paying half of everyone's fuel bills on average over the winter of 22-23. So we spent, quite rightly, a vast amount of money. And that has an impact. That had an impact on inflation, not just here, but across Europe. Don't forget, and anyone can check it very easily, inflation actually peaked at a slightly higher rate in October 2022 in the EU than it was in the UK. We've now brought that right back down to the level that we want, to around 2%. And because of that, we're now in a position to continue with a tax cut, such as the one on national insurance. We know if Labour come into power, that they will put taxes up. They've ruled out some, but they haven't ruled out things like council taxes, stamp duty, inheritance tax. There are all sorts of taxes that we could see being brought in and will be brought in if Labour come in and spend the money they've said they're going to spend.
OK. Look, we've got to leave it there, but we really appreciate your time, David Davies. Thanks very much indeed.
Well, here are the candidates in the Monmouthshire constituency. Ian Bellin, Plaid Cymru.
Ian Chandler for the Green Party.
David T.C. Davies, Conservative Party.
June Davies, the True and Fair Party.
Catherine Fuchs, Labour Party.
Owen Lewis, who's an independent.
Emma Meredith, Heritage Party.
Bill Powell for the Lib Dems.
Max Windsor, Peplo, Reform UK.
OK. Here's your weather.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M55 in Lancashire is blocked each way where there are people on the motorway at junction 1 at Fulwood, with queues from the M6. In Lincolnshire, the A17 is closed each way west of the A15, holding them roundabout at Sleaford for an investigation causing delays. On the M6 in the West Midlands, there are southbound queues from junction 7 for the A34 to 6 at Spaghetti Junction, Birmingham, after a breakdown earlier. On the M42 in Worcestershire, the outside lanes closed southbound after an accident at junction 2 at Alvechurch, causing queues. In Hertfordshire, the A10 is partly blocked southbound just after the Hoddesdon roundabout. It's very slow towards and past there. On the M25 in Kent, it's slow clockwise from junction 4 at Orpington to 5 for the M26, with queues on the M26 towards there too because of roadworks. And train services in West Sussex are suspended southbound from Horsham to Barnham with track safety checks. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
There's still time to win our Summer Spectacular with an incredible trio of treats, and you could win them. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually, it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's election channel. I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock on Friday, the 21st of June. Today, the battle for number 10. Party leaders faced another grilling on a TV election programme last night, but who came out on top?
The PM is furious about betting on the date of the election, but who else might be implicated and who won the debate last night on Question Time?
The hunt for Jay Slater, the missing teenager in Tenerife, has now entered its fifth day as a friend claims the Spanish police are not doing enough.
Hollywood icon Donald Sutherland has died at the age of 88. We'll look back on his career, which spanned more than 7 decades.
Thousands of people have flocked to Stonehenge this morning to celebrate the summer solstice, marking the beginning of the astronomical summer.
Good morning. It's another sunny day for many of us, but there is some rain due later. You can find out all the details with me a little later on.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Right, we'll crack on with the latest debate, should we? Which was last night on the Beeb. Leaders of the Conservative Party, Labour Party, Lib Dems and the SNP were grilled by members of the public in an election special.
Well, the Prime Minister said he was incredibly angry to learn about Tory figures allegedly betting on the election date.
Ed Davey taken to task over his handling of the Post Office scandal.
And Sir Keir Starmer said Jeremy Corbyn would have made a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson.
Oh, it's all quite controversial. Let's have a look back at the last 24 hours in politics.
Well, like you, I was incredibly angry to learn of these allegations. It's a really serious matter. It's right that they're being investigated properly by the relevant law enforcement authorities, including, as Fiona said, a criminal investigation by the police.
Migration is at record levels at the moment under this government. They've completely lost control. We need to get that number down. We need to get it significantly down. I'm not going to put an arbitrary figure on it, because every single politician who's put a number on it has never met that number.
When Alan Bates wrote to me, I'd been in office about 2 weeks, and I wrote to him and said, no, this is a matter for the Post Office, we don't govern it, and I'm not going to meet you. He wrote back furious, he did, and then I read his letter and said, well, I better meet him. And I met him in October, as you said, Fiona, and I took all his questions and I asked them to my officials and to the Post Office. And they gave me a categorical assurance that the points that Mr Bates was making were not true.
When Labour launched their manifesto last week, there were 6 key objectives. Not one of them mentioned legal immigration. Not one of them mentioned the population explosion in this country.
All right, let's get the thoughts of our political editor, Christopher Hope. Chris, good to see you. He's gone. Sadly, the line has just crashed. Oh, that's technology for you. I mean, it was fascinating in a way that everyone was put under a lot of pressure. But what is key in all of this is how you respond. Now, the Prime Minister seemed to be sort of contrite about the scandal surrounding him. However, is he taking any action about it? Should he take any action about it? Keir Starmer, over this whole Jeremy Corbyn issue, he'd be a great Prime Minister, and he doesn't know how to dig himself out of those comments, does he? I think we have got Christopher Hope. I think that line is back up and running, Chris. This Jeremy Corbyn line for Keir Starmer just isn't going away. He can't seem to bury it.
Yes, morning, Ellie. Morning, Stephen. He's got a problem, hasn't he, Keir Starmer, on this one, because he said before that he thought he would never win, but said he would make a great Prime Minister. This is Jeremy Corbyn back in 2019, and then pressed 5 times last night by the audience on the BBC's Question Time programme. He said this, that he would be a better Prime Minister. Look what we got. Boris Johnson, a man who made massive promises, didn't keep them, and then had to leave Parliament in disgrace. So he would say, wouldn't he, that Corbyn, who wouldn't push the nuclear trigger to defend our country from attack, will be a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson. Now, despite all of Boris Johnson's many weaknesses, I think many would say he made the right choice on some big calls, particularly on COVID-19, early adoption, early prosecution of the vaccine, and pushing hard, leading Europe support for Ukraine against Russia. Would Jeremy Corbyn have done that? I mean, Jeremy Corbyn questioned whether the Russians were behind the Salisbury poisoning, for example. And Keir Starmer is saying that Jeremy Corbyn would have been better PM than Boris Johnson. That is pause for thought, I think, for Tories, for Red Wall supporters who came across the Tory party in 19 to vote for Labour this morning.
Yes. Rishi Sunak, what did you make of his performance last night? He had to answer questions about this betting scandal, which just isn't going anywhere.
It's going nowhere, and it might grow this weekend, Ellie. We know, of course, there are 2 candidates at the election who are now implicated in the issue. There's the director of campaigns of the entire Tory campaign is taking a leave of absence. There's a policeman who protects Rishi Sunak. He's been arrested, all tied up with whether money was placed on the July the 4th general election. The data we see now from Betfair and others show a lot of money going on the 21st of May, a day before Rishi Sunak walked out in the rain at 5:15 p.m. and called the election. To the surprise of most people, no one thought it was coming, so clearly that information was held by a small group of people. It's normally a novelty market. These markets aren't really, not like betting on the Grand National. There's a low-level numbers of bets all the time on politics, but not big ones. So when you see a big spike, the betting companies must investigate, and the Gambling Commission is doing that. Rishi Sunak is on the front foot now. He's saying in terms, he's incredibly angry last night. These are really serious allegations. He says it's right that they're being investigated by the relevant authorities. He's crystal clear that if anyone has broken the rules, they'll feel the full force of the law and be booted out of the Conservative Party. But yet again, it's another problem, a self-induced problem by this Tory party. When he called that election, Ellie and Stephen, on the 22nd of May, he had to do it and nothing could go wrong. Everything had to go right to overhaul Labour's huge lead in the polls. Initially, it went right. Nigel Farage backed out from standing in the campaign. He's now back and got his mojo back, and things keep going wrong. Leaving D-Day early was a mistake, and now this. It never rains, but it pours, it seems, for this Prime Minister.
Yeah, it just seems to have gone from bad to worse, doesn't it? Meanwhile, the Lib Dems, is it the first time we've seen Ed Davis on the stage with all of this? I mean, he got a lot of stick, not only for the post office business, but also for what he's been up to in this campaign.
Yes, I mean, yes, he got some stick. I think he's had quite a good election. I think he knows that he's not going to be Prime Minister. We asked him that for GB News at Thorpe Park, of all places. He says, no, I want to elect local champions, maybe as many as 50, as we saw from the polls this week, the Savanta poll. And he wants them to champion key issues locally. He's not like Joe Swinson back in 2019, saying, Joe Swinson, I can be your Prime Minister. I mean, imagine, you got 12 MPs by the end of it. What a complete farce that was. So I think think he's playing quite a clever campaign. He's being eye-catching stunts, not taking himself too seriously. At the heart of his campaign is NHS and social care, which arguably is one of the top 3 issues for most voters. And he's come across as someone who is a decent guy, I think. And the Lib Dems have been nowhere in public life since 2015, when they lost all those seats and the difficulties of the coalition. So I think he's done what he could. He's restored the Lib Dems' pride, I think, and probably dozens of MPs too in the next Parliament.
OK, well, we shall see in the only poll that actually counts in 10 days or so. Christopher, for now, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. Now, the search for missing teenager Jay Slater has entered its 5th day in Tenerife after he was last heard from on Monday morning.
Well, a mate of his has hit out at Spanish police, claiming they're not doing enough at the moment.
Well, the 19-year-old called a friend to say he was lost with no water and his phone was on 1% battery.
Well, let's talk to travel writer Joe Crawley, our reporter as well, Sophie Reaper, who's in Jay's hometown of Oswald-Twistle. Joe, can we start with you on all of this? I mean, what do we know about the location in which Jay has gone missing?
Well, it's a very, very rugged area, the Tino Rural Park. I mean, rural suggests more countryside and meadows, but it really is. There's valleys.
OK, I think I'm out of vision for now. Thank God.
They can stretch about 2,000 feet. They can be as deep as 2,000 feet. Lots of crevices, lots of hidden caves, rocks. It's a very, very difficult terrain to walk, never mind to find a lost person.
So it could be a very complex operation then, Joe. What can you tell us about the search operation so far? Do we know how many people are involved and what kind of teams are out looking for him?
I know that the police are there, the mountain rescue teams are there, and the voluntary fire brigade service, as well as members of the public, have joined the search. It's a vast area, but it probably need more people. There is a number to call if people want to join when they're over here, which is 061. That's to join the official search rather than just going off by themselves, because it's very easy to get lost in that area.
I can't help but wonder, I mean, they must be asking the question, what on earth would he be doing there in the first place?
Well, he's a 19-year-old lad. He came to a rave in the south. After that, he met people and they said, we're having an after party back in our villa. The villa was in Masca, about 30 kilometres away from the south. So, yeah, I guess he's just been a 19-year-old lad. These things happen. I've got a 19-year-old son myself, and I know, you know, they think they're invincible and crazy things can happen, but I don't particularly think there's anything suspicious in that myself. It's just a very, very remote, one of the most remote areas in Tenerife, in fact.
And Joe, what's the weather like there at the moment? Because the weather conditions will play into this search.
I mean, at the moment, they're pretty good. Cloudy skies, but there's sunshine as well. There has been a day of cloud and mist. It can get cold there, though. I mean, especially in the shadows, you can drop to, you know, into the 2-3 degrees. So there's real extremes. I think the day went missing. I think the temperature was about 27, 28 in that area. So you're going from 28 down to 2 or 3 degrees, and this guy's dressed in nothing but shorts. He's dehydrated from the party already. He said he was lacking water. So, yeah, very, very difficult.
OK, Joe Crawley, thanks very much indeed. Let's head to Oswald-Twistle, Jay's hometown. Sophie Reaper is there for us. Morning, Sophie.
Good morning to you both. Well, this is just the kind of thing that nobody expects to happen to them or in their hometown, but it has happened to the town of Oswald-Twistle, and right at the heart of it is the Methodist Church, where yesterday evening family, friends of Jay's, as well as members of the local community gathered here. There was a 30-minute service led by one of the reverends here, where people gathered to simply spread the message of hope. You can see behind me there are blue ribbons tied outside, along the banisters, but all along this road here that people have gathered together to place in a message of hope. There's also a Facebook group with close to 500,000 members now as people remain invested in the story of Jay. The last update came from one of Jay's friends' mothers. She posted to say that they are drained beyond words. I just can't say no more. I wish I could. I wish this would end now, this living nightmare. Searches are going on and we remain positive. And positivity is the word here in Oswald Twistle as well. People of the community, as I say, gathering yesterday to tie those blue ribbons as a symbol of hope as they continue to hope and pray that Jay will come home.
I hope he does come home and he's found safe. Sophie Reaper, thank you very much indeed.
Oh, yeah, really, really concerning. And I tell you what, if this doesn't act as a warning, though, for what we've seen in the last 2 weeks, a young man going missing in these sort of that sort of climate and terrain, Michael Mosley, who was, I think he was 67, going missing in that sort of heat and terrain, justly use it as a warning.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Really scary stuff, actually.
We did have a view on earlier, and forgive me, I'm not going to be able to pull it up now. It's going to be way down the list. But somebody did make the point, if you were ever lost anywhere in the world, just go on watch 3 words. I've used it before. Every 3 metres squared in the world has been given a unique 3-word combination, if you like. So even if you've got 1% battery, just what 3 words, and you can ping a person, those 3 words, and they will be able to find you where you are. So just a good tip for everyone to know. That was really useful on
if you've got if you've got a signal.
If you've got signal.
But no, what through it's very, very clever.
Yeah.
Very
so that's
clever.
just a good tip for everyone to be aware of.
Yeah. All right, look, let's take a break away from the doom and gloom and give you something to smile about this morning, because it's time for our giveaway, your chance to win more than £16,000 worth of prizes.
Yes, £15,000 worth in cash, and then a whole host of summer treats as well. So it could be yours, but of course, you've got to be in it to win it. So here are all the details that you need.
Don't miss out on your chance to win our Summer Spectacular. And have we got a prize for you? First, there's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can also enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, best of luck to you on that one. Still to come, we're going to be remembering the acting legend Donald Sutherland, who's died at the age of 88. It's coming up next.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said stump. You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere. Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Camilla Tominey. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Plenty of mixers, plenty of lovely gin.
Yes.
What have you got here for us? Just explain what you've brought in.
So today I'm going to be presenting the Cotswolds Dry Gin and the Cotswolds Wildflower Gin. Ooh. So the first one that was introduced into our market was the Cotswolds Dry Gin. Now we have 9 different types of botanicals. We introduce into our pot still. We introduce well, obviously juniper berries because it's a London dry. angelica roots and coriander seeds, giving it that little limey flavour. Also, cardamom seeds, then black peppercorn, giving it a little spice. And then the part that is more interesting that regards to the pouring, we have the grapefruit peel and the lime peel. We're going to start with the Cotswolds Dry. Okay, so the first one introduced.
So Ellie was taking the mick out of me this morning because I said my favourite gin was, what is it, pink lemonade?
You like a pink gin and lemonade, yes.
You called me, I'm going to say what you said. You said that's a bit girly.
As you see, it turned into cloudy. Those are the oils of the spices because we don't filter it. Our gin is completely unfiltered.
Got it.
I love this. It's 11:52. It's never too early. Cheers.
Cheers.
And would you have any... This sounds very juvenile. Would you have any snacks with gin? Or does it ruin it?
Olives.
Ah, you can tell your culture.
It depends on how you're drinking it and where you are, like what you're actually going to do with it. But you can have pretty much all sorts. As long as it stays on the salty side, that's what I would go for personally.
A salty snack.
Yeah, that's what I would go for.
So olives, would you say, is that a good choice, or crisps, nuts?
They're quite salty olives, aren't they?
It depends on your taste, really. Like personally, I wouldn't go for it, but I have seen. And the culture behind gin is drastically increased over the years. The flavours are all different.
That's really good.
Exactly. You see what I mean?
Oh, very nice.
Like that zesty, floral kind of flavour coming through. They're absolutely stunning, aren't they?
The People's Channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, the actor Donald Sutherland, whose career spanned more than 7 decades, has died at the age of 88.
Well, his many credits included The Dirty Dozen in 1967, the war comedy MASH in 1970, and Ordinary People in 1980, which won the Academy Award for Best Picture.
Yeah, but we're missing out on... What was the film called with President Snow?
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games. Oh, my God, they were amazing. Stephanie Tetchy is here. I mean, he's a man, because of his longevity, his appeal spans so many generations.
And that's what was so special about him, and that's why so many audiences, both old and young, know something that they've watched with Donald Sutherland in. And his son, Kiefer Sutherland, who's also an actor, I think he summed it pretty well in the statement yesterday. He said that he thinks his dad was one of the most important actors of film history because he had under 200 films that he starred in, you know, under 7 decades. So can you imagine the depth of talent he had? And, you know, he's played so many different roles. He's not a man he wasn't a man that played the same role over and over. He could be the hero or he could be the villain. And
actually, he did a villain very well.
He did, and that's what was the beauty of his acting. He managed to bring charisma to each role that he brought, and he impressed viewers so much. And I think, you know, the word legend gets used all the time, but I really do think we've lost an acting great here and someone that will be missed from the cinema. In his career, he never won an Oscar. Never won a gold, never won an Oscar, and I really do feel he deserved it. And he's always spoken about that, and he said it wasn't about the Oscar, it was about doing something I loved. And he was one of those actors that was never out of work. And, you know, I think this weekend a lot of film buffs will be watching all of the films he's starred in before because there's just so much depth there. You've got 200 of them to pick.
Yeah, wow. And I had no idea that he'd been suffering with a long-term illness.
Yeah, in Miami, I think the family had kept this very private, and they are going to be keeping his funeral very private. They said it will be a celebration of life, but it always happens with these actors. You know, you always watch them in films and think, oh, everything's OK, but he was 88, so he did have a good run, but obviously behind closed doors there was a lot going in. But he starred with so many people over the years, including Jane Fonda in the film Clute, so I can imagine, and they were actually lovers, but I can imagine
in real life?
Yeah, they had an affair, but I think she would be quite devastated this morning, as much of the acting industry would. And I think a lot of young people just remember him as President Snow in Hunger Games.
And he was just so amazing as President Snow. We're just seeing a clip there. He's not even speaking in the part. He's just looking at Katniss Everdeen on the screen. And he's such an incredible actor.
I think
he doesn't even need to be speaking.
His look was quite distinctive, and what I always remembered about him on screen is he had this piercing gaze, and then when he would open his mouth, you just want to listen to him, whether he was the villain or the hero. So he definitely is an acting great that we've lost.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, because obviously you mentioned Kiefer, who, I mean... has become this tremendous actor
Yeah.
in his own right.
Yeah.
And in a way, you want to view Kiefer in his own right,
Yeah.
but in a way, on a day like today, it feels like he's sort of keeping his dad going a little bit, you're keeping the legend going.
Definitely, and I think that's the beauty about acting families, because I think you're right, Kiefer is an actor in his own right, but then you can actually see if you had such a great acting father like that, you can imagine his talent has been passed down to Kiefer and to be surrounded by that. But I would say Kiefer Sutherland is not a Nepo baby, he's definitely someone who's carved out his own career.
Yeah.
Stephanie, whilst we've got you, can you talk about another great story, McKellen? How is he? Because he fell off the stage, didn't he?
Yeah, that was quite horrifying news, I think, for a lot of the viewers who'd gone to see him. But he is making recovery. He says he's in hospital. As a true thespian, Sir Ian McKellen wants to get back on stage, but unfortunately he cannot do the London dates of Players King, so they said that he has to do some physiotherapy at the moment. He says I have to do some exercise and recover. He's hoping to get back in stage for the Bristol date of the production will be taking place next week, Wednesday. He'll be covered by his understudy, David Seamark. But Sir Ian McKellen is 85 years old. And, you know, I can imagine his mind is willing, but his body, he has to listen to the experts' advice and take it easy. And it wouldn't be right for him to get back on stage. As soon as it happened, he was like, yep, I'm going to be back on stage.
He did, didn't he?
But he has to follow medical advice, and I think for the production as well, it's about sticking to health advice here.
Yeah, I mean, you know, with the best will in the world, you don't bounce back quite so quickly at that age,
No, you don't. Even at my age, I don't think.
No. All right, Steph, really good to see you.
Thank you so
very
much,
indeed.
guys.
Thank you very much. That's it from us. You are back tomorrow from 6. Britain's Newsroom is next with Ben and Nana.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's going to be another fairly dry and bright day for most of us, warmest in the south and east once again, but some rain is arriving later on today from the west. That's a weather front moving into parts of Northern Ireland through this morning and into western areas of Scotland by this afternoon. And we will see some rain on that this evening across this far south and west. But ahead of it, another dry and fine day. Plenty of sunshine around, high UV levels as well. It's going to feel warm in that June sunshine, highs of 24, 25 degrees across the southeast, but up to the low 20s up across northeastern areas of England, southeastern Scotland even as well. But into this evening, that wet weather will make its progress a little bit further east. Not going to bring too much in the way of heavier rain, but it certainly will turn cloudier from the west. So parts of the Highlands, the Western Isles seeing some of that rain. Northern Ireland could see some heavier showers breaking out as well. But further east across northeastern England, actually will still be a fairly dry and bright evening. Temperatures still pretty high as well to end the day. Into Devon and Cornwall as well, we could see some of that wet weather, particularly on the coast and high ground is where we're most likely to see that rain. Now this rain is going to move eastwards through the night to central areas of England, and it will likely lie across the